Urgent military news. Move. Everyone get out of the way. The screams echoed through the streets of Great Jing City. I heard the frantic galloping of a horse and the terrified shouts of the commoners as they scrambled to clear a path. A blood-stained figure raced toward the imperial palace, leaving a trail of panic in his wake. But I wasn't on the street. I was lying in a room inside the majestic Champion Marquis mansion. A woman's sobbing drifted into my ears, pulling me out of a deep fog. Where was I? I forced my eyes open. The room was strange, filled with ancient, ornate furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Son, you're awake. A beautiful woman named by phone heard my weak murmur. She rushed to my side, her face lighting up with relief. I wanted to ask her if this was some kind of movie set, but before I could speak, a massive wave of memories crashed into my brain. The pain was blinding. I screamed, clutching my head. Son, what's wrong? Don't scare me like this. By phone cried, her voice trembling with terror. After what felt like an eternity, the agony faded. I lay there, panting, as the truth settled in. I hadn't just woken up, I had crossed over. This wasn't a movie. This was my new reality. Mom, don't worry. I'm fine, I said. To my surprise, the words felt natural. The memories of the original owner of this body were now mine. You scared me to death, by phone whispered, stroking my face with trembling hands. I'm really okay now, Mom. I just need some rest. Can I be alone for a bit? She didn't want to leave, but after a few more reassurances, she finally stepped out, looking back at me one last time before closing the door. I sat up and took a deep breath. My name was Lin Chen, the same as my name back on Earth. I was in the Great Jing Dynasty. My new father was Lin Zhantian, the Champion Marquis, a man who commanded 200,000 troops. In this kingdom, he was a titan of power. And me? I was a total disaster. At 18, the original Lin Chen was the definition of a spoiled brat. He spent his days peeping at widows, stealing clothes from young maidens, and terrorizing the streets with his group of thugs. The list of his misdeeds was endless. But there was a reason he had turned out this way. This was the Tianwu continent, a world where martial strength was everything. And Lin Chen? He was trash. He had zero talent for cultivation. His father had spent a fortune on rare elixirs to fix his meridians, but nothing worked. Eventually, he just gave up and decided to drown his shame in wine and women. I sighed. In a world where the strong eat the weak, being the talentless son of a legendary general was a death sentence of social pressure. No wonder he had spiraled. But his death wasn't an accident. Last night, the eldest son of the Marquis of Jinnan and a few princes had invited him out for drinks, claiming they wanted to celebrate his upcoming marriage. They drank heavily, and then, the memory cut to black. Someone wanted me dead. I thought about the Marquis's son. He was definitely involved. Rest in peace, brother, I whispered to the empty room. If someone murdered you, I'll make them pay. I'm living your life now, so your enemies are mine. As soon as I said it, a strange weight lifted from my chest. My soul finally felt perfectly fused with this new body. But the fear remained. This world was terrifying. Masters here could split mountains and walk on air. How was a guy with no cultivation supposed to survive? Maybe I could just hide in the mansion forever and let my powerful dad protect me. Suddenly, a crisp, electronic chime rang in my head. Asterisk ding. Sign-in system loaded. Host locked. Would you like to bind? Asterisk. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. I knew this. I had read 1,000 web novels back on Earth. This was my golden finger. Bind. Do it now. I shouted in my mind. Asterisk ding. Binding successful. This is the sign-in system. Sign in daily for rewards, techniques, pills, divine weapons, or character summons. First time binding bonus. Newbie gift bag. Would you like to claim it? Claim it. Asterisk ding. You have received 1 God-grade marrow cleansing pill and 1 character summon card. Items stored in system space. Asterisk. I didn't waste a second. A shimmering, palm-sized pill appeared in my hand, glowing with a faint, mystical mist. It smelled heavenly. I swallowed it whole. Pain exploded through my veins. It felt like my bones were being crushed and remade. 10 minutes later, I was sprinting to the courtyard pond to wash off the thick, black sludge that had oozed out of my pores. I felt incredible. My body was light, and I could feel a raw, untapped power surging through my limbs. The pill had worked. My trash talent was gone. I headed back to my room, eager to try my next reward. System, use the summon card. Asterisk ding. Summoning successful. Character, Dianwei, asterisk. A black vortex opened in the middle of my room. A massive, tower-like figure stepped out. He looked like a demon of war, his muscles bulging with terrifying strength. He knelt on one knee, his voice like rolling thunder. Greetings, master. Stand up, I said, my voice shaking slightly with excitement. From now on, call me young master. Yes, young master. I checked his stats. Dianwei was at the 9th stage of the Great Grandmaster realm. In this world, the levels went from body refining all the way to shattering the void. A Great Grandmaster was a powerhouse that most people would never even see in their lifetime. He also came with heaven-grade techniques and his signature blood-soaked twin halberds. I looked at this legendary warrior who was now 100% loyalty to me. Maybe I did have the potential to be a conqueror after all, but my celebration was cut short. The news from the street earlier finally reached the mansion. My father, the man who held this whole family together, had been killed in battle. The sky was about to fall. In the Great Jing Dynasty, a great grandmaster was a legend, someone most people would never see in their entire lives. From my inherited memories, I knew my cheap old man, Lin Zhantian, was exactly that, a top-tier powerhouse at the Great Grandmaster stage. After sending Dianwei to rest, I realized I hadn't used my daily check-in yet. System, check-in, I commanded mentally. Asterisk ding. Check-in successful. Congratulations, host, you have obtained the God-grade cultivation technique, Imperial Xianyuan art, asterisk. The system asked if I wanted to practice it immediately. I didn't hesitate. A massive wave of information flooded my brain, gentle but firm. Within moments, the complex energy pathways of the technique were etched into my soul. I pulled up my status panel to see where I stood. Host asterisk Lin Chen realm asterisk body refining. Stage 3 technique asterisk Imperial Xianyuan art. God grade. Martial arts asterisk breeze sword technique. Yellow grade. Entry level. Points asterisk 100. I was surprised to see I was already at the 3rd stage of body refining. When I first crossed over, I didn't understand cultivation, so I hadn't noticed the original Lin Chen strength. I closed the panel with a smirk. My talent had been remade by the marrow cleansing pill, and now I had a God-grade technique. It was time to get to work. I sat cross-legged on the bed and began to circulate my energy. The spiritual chi in the air rushed into my meridians like they were welcoming an old friend. After the pill's transformation, my meridians were wider and tougher than ever before. My cultivation speed was monstrous. 1 hour later, I broke through to the 4th stage of body refining. I was ready to keep going, but a sudden, heart-wrenching wail from outside my door stopped me cold. Young Marquis. It's terrible. The Marquis has fallen in battle. It was the house steward. I could hear the tears in his voice. My head spun. My mouth went dry as I whispered, "How?" He was a great grandmaster. I shoved the door open. The steward was collapsed in the courtyard, looking like a man who had lost his soul. I didn't have time to console him. I sprinted toward the main hall. Inside, a palace eunuch was finishing the announcement. My mother, Lady by phone, stood frozen. She looked like she hadn't heard a word. "Impossible," she murmured. Zhantian couldn't have died. I rushed in just as the eunuch was about to leave. "What happened to my father?" "Young Marquis. See for yourself," the eunuch said, handing me the imperial decree. I scanned the document. It confirmed the worst. The emperor expressed his grief and granted my father a funeral with the honors of a prince. I looked at the table nearby. My father's signature spear stood there, solitary and cold. The decree said his body had been trampled in the chaos of the battlefield. Only his weapon had been recovered. I felt a terrifying calm wash over me. My eyes were bloodshot, but I refused to let a single tear fall. I had to be strong. My mother needed me. "Son, your father isn't dead, right?" Bai Feng asked, her voice trembling as she clutched my arm. I couldn't answer. I just pulled her into a hug, trying to give her whatever strength I had left. Meanwhile, across the city in the Jinan Marquis mansion, the atmosphere was very different. Du Ziting, the eldest son of Marquis Du Changchun, was laughing. Father, Lin Zhantian is dead. The champion marquee mansion is no longer a threat. Don't be careless, Du Changchun said, his eyes narrowing. Did you handle Linichin? Don't worry, father. He won't survive past noon today. The two shared a dark, knowing smile. At the same time, in the residence of the Minister of Rights, Xia Yunsheng delivered the news to his daughter, Xia Qingwu. Your uncle Lin, he's gone. Xia Qingwu gasped, covering her mouth. How? The details aren't clear yet, Xia Yunsheng sighed. Your wedding with Yichin will have to be postponed. They had been set to marry in 3 days. It was an arrangement made by two old friends who hoped the marriage would settle the rebellious Lin Yichin down. Xia Qingwu remained eerily calm, as if they weren't talking about her life. Father, whether I am happy with it or not, I will marry him. Don't worry, she said firmly. Her father sighed and left her alone in the courtyard. Back at our mansion, I stayed by my mother's side until she finally cried herself to sleep. Once she was resting, I finally had a moment to think. My father was a great grandmaster, the ceiling of power in this kingdom. He wouldn't just die easily in battle. Father, rest in peace, I whispered into the dark. I will find the truth. If someone betrayed you, I'll make them wish they were never born. I might be a soul from another world, but our memories had merged perfectly. Lin Zhantian was my father now. News of his death spread through the capital like wildfire. Some mourned a hero, others celebrated the fall of a rival. I ignored it all. I spent the evening organizing the household and ensuring my mother was fed. As night fell, I returned to my courtyard. Dianwei stepped out of the shadows like a ghost. Master, guard the mansion, I ordered. Don't let anyone in. Yes, master. His massive, iron-like frame bowed before he vanished back into the darkness. I sat on my bed, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. The champion marquee mansion was teetering on the edge of a cliff. The only way to survive was strength. Pure, overwhelming strength. I closed my eyes and began to circulate the imperial Xianyuan art. The night passed in a heartbeat. I sat cross-legged on my bed, the air around me vibrating with intense energy. I was right on the edge of a breakthrough. After a final push, the pressure snapped. I had reached the 5th level of the body-tempering realm. I exhaled slowly, finishing my cultivation session as the incense stick burned out. I shook my head, feeling a bit dissatisfied. An entire night of work, and I only went up 1 level? If any of the so-called geniuses in this world heard me complaining, they'd probably team up to beat me to death. Most people took months or years to do what I just did in hours. System, I whispered in my mind, sign in. A crisp chime echoed in my head. Congratulations to the host for a successful sign-in. You have received 1 character summons card. Would you like to use it? My heart leaped. Another summon? Use it, I commanded immediately. Congratulations, you have successfully summoned He Wuchang. I froze in surprise. I thought the system only summoned historical figures from Earth, but He Wuchang was a legend from Chinese mythology, a literal reaper of the underworld. I pulled up his status panel. Name, He Wuchang. Realm, 9th grade Great Grandmaster. Cultivation art, Ghost Soul Scripture, Heavenly Grade. Weapon, Soul Hooking Sickle, Heavenly Grade. I grinned. With Jianwei guarding me and He Wuchang in the shadows, I now had 2 great grandmasters at my beck and call. It was time to start building my foundation. Suddenly, a black vortex tore open in the middle of the room. A figure stepped out, draped in flowing black robes and wearing a tall, pointed hat. On the hat, for characters were written, Peace under heaven. The aura he radiated was chilling. Young master, the figure said, kneeling on one knee with deep respect. Rise, I said, leaning forward to inspect him. He looked terrifying, short, stout, with a face as dark as charcoal and a fierce, menacing expression. I had a specific job for him. I needed an intelligence network. First, I had to know the truth behind my father's death. Second, I needed to protect myself. The original me had died before the news of my father's death even reached the capital. Someone had moved against me while my father was still technically alive. That meant there was a massive conspiracy at play. I want you to establish an organization called the Hall of Broken Souls, I told him. Gather intelligence. Monitor the capital. Find out who killed my father. As you command, young master, He Wuchang replied. I trust you have ways to ensure the loyalty of your subordinates. Rest assured, young master. I will not disappoint you. Good. Whatever gold or resources you need, I'll provide. Just make it fast. With a bow, He Wuchang vanished into the shadows. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Dian Wei was my shield. He Wuchang would be my eyes and ears. For now, I would keep acting like the pampered, useless heir. I needed to stay safe while I was still weak. Once I found the culprits, I would strike like a lightning bolt. I called for a maid, washed up, and changed into clean clothes before heading to my mother's courtyard. Mother, I called out softly. My phone looked up, forcing a weak smile. Son, the steward has checked the dates. Your father's funeral is set for 3 days from now. I understand, I said, nodding. I stayed to eat breakfast with her, trying to offer what little comfort I could. The next 2 days passed in a blur of cultivation. I reached the 6th level of the body tempering realm, but my luck with the system seemed to have run out. My daily sign-in rewards were weird. One day I got a massive pack of toilet paper. The next, a giant bottle of shampoo. I stared at the items, my lip twitching. What was I supposed to do with toilet paper in a fantasy world? On the 3rd morning, I tried again. Sign in. Ding. Congratulations. You have received the divine grade technique. 1,000 swords returning to the ancestors. Learn it, I said instantly. Knowledge flooded my brain. It felt as if I had practiced the technique millions of times over decades. It was a peak-level skill, and though my current strength wasn't enough to unleash its full power, I now had a trump card that could level a battlefield. The frustration from the shampoo and toilet paper vanished. I straightened my robes and headed to the main hall. Today was the funeral. Young Marquis stewardly greeted me with a deep bow. He looked exhausted from the arrangements. You've worked hard, Uncle Lee, I said. He looked startled by my kindness, but bowed even lower. I lit incense for my father and knelt to kowtow. My father had only ever married my mother, and I was their only child. The hall felt cold and empty, filled only with servants. According to the customs of the great Jing dynasty, a wife couldn't join the funeral procession, so my mother had to stay behind. Raise the coffin, the steward shouted. The coffin was light. My father's body had never been recovered. It held only his clothes. I walked at the very front of the procession, my face a mask of stone, carrying my father's heavy spear in my hands. As we marched out of the mansion, I heard my mother sobbing behind us until she eventually fainted from grief. I didn't turn back. I kept walking. The sky was gray and heavy, a storm brewing in the distance. The streets of the capital were eerily quiet. Thousands of people lined the roads, watching us pass. Up in a nearby restaurant, a young man named Du Zeding stared down at me like he'd seen a ghost. How is he alive? He hissed, his face twisting in rage. He had clearly expected me to be dead by now. Fine. Enjoy your extra 2 days of life. Further down the street, a veiled woman watched the procession. It was Xia Qingwu. My father had treated her like his own daughter, and she was technically my fiancée. She looked at me with a complicated expression before quickly turning away. Farewell, Marquis, someone shouted from the crowd. Farewell, hero of the North, others joined in. My father had been a protector of the common people, and their grief was real. I kept my gaze fixed forward, one step at a time. But as we reached the main intersection, the path was blocked. A group of men pushing 8 carts full of stinking manure rolled into the middle of the street, stopping right in front of the funeral procession. The leader of the group looked at me with a sneer, completely unimpressed by the mourning crowd. Oh, look, it's the young Marquis, the man said loudly. Hey, kid, how about you and your buddies move aside? My brothers and I have work to do. I narrowed my eyes. These people were clearly sent to humiliate my father's memory. And if I don't move? I asked calmly. In my mind, these men were already dead. The leader laughed, leaning against a cart of filth. If you don't move, well, you wouldn't want the old Marquis's coffin getting covered in all this crap, would you? The other men burst into laughter, their voices echoing off the nearby buildings. Up in the restaurant, Du Zeding leaned against the window frame, watching the show with a cruel, mocking smirk. Even Xia Qingwu, watching from the crowd, frowned. I could see the killing intent flashing in her eyes. These fools were practically begging for death. The rage inside me finally boiled over. Today was my father's funeral. I hadn't wanted to spill blood. I had planned to deal with these pests slowly, one by one, after he was laid to rest. But some people just can't wait to find their graves. If they wanted to die so badly, I would oblige. Dianwei, I said, my voice cold. Kill them all. Yes, young master. A massive, tower-like figure exploded from the funeral procession. Before the leader of the thugs could even register what was happening, Dianwei was on him. A single, massive fist collided with the man's head. There was a sickening wet pop, and the leader's skull shattered like a dropped melon. He died instantly, eyes wide with a shock that would never fade. The other thugs froze. They were paralyzed with terror, watching their leader's brains coat the pavement. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of heads bursting under Dianwei's fists rhythmically hammered against everyone's hearts. By the time the crowd realized what was happening, Dianwei was already back at my side, standing like a silent stone guardian. Move, I commanded. The procession started again, stepping over the fresh corpses and the spilled manure. Up in the restaurant, Du Zeding's jaw hit the floor. He was so stunned he forgot to close his mouth. He had sent those men to probe our reaction, to see if the Marquis's house was truly broken. He never expected me to be so reckless, or so ruthless, as to commit mass murder in broad daylight on the streets of the capital. As the procession faded into the distance, Du Zeding turned and sprinted for home. He had to tell his father. Xia Qingwu watched my retreating back from the crowd, her expression unreadable and deep in thought. After we buried my father in the ancestral lands, I didn't linger. I knew the Marquis's estate was a target, so I hurried back immediately. When I arrived, the servants were in a panic. My mother, by phone, had fainted again from grief. I rushed to her room. The doctor had already seen her, and she was just waking up. Mother, you have to take care of yourself, I said, sitting by her bed. Father's spirit wouldn't want to see you like this. She forced a weak smile to put me at ease. I'm fine, son. I just need a few days of rest. While my mother rested, the news reached the residence of the Duke of Jinan. Is everything you said true? Du Changchun asked, his eyes narrowing. Every word, father, Du Zeding replied, still shaking slightly. The man was too fast. At the very least, he's a grandmaster. Du Changchun let out a cold snort. I didn't expect Lin Zhantian to leave a trump card for his useless son. To reveal his hidden strength so early, what a waste. To him, I was still just a pampered brat. He didn't think I was worth his full attention. Let him live a few more days. Send people to watch him. Kill him the moment there's an opening. Back in my own courtyard, I dismissed the servants. Come out, I said to the empty air. Hei Wuchang appeared silently before me, bowing low. Greetings, young master. No need for formalities. How is the task? I have already recruited 150 men, he reported. I nodded. Good. Keep expanding. Also, send a few men to investigate Du Zeding. Understood. He vanished as quickly as he had appeared. I had a feeling that the man blocking the road today was his doing. I pushed the distractions aside and sat down to cultivate. The night passed in a blur of energy and focus. When the sun rose, I opened my eyes and sighed. This is too slow. At this rate, when will I ever reach the great Grandmaster realm? I wasn't satisfied, but then I remembered my system. System, sign in. Ding. Sign in successful. Congratulations, host. You have obtained 1 year of cultivation power. Use now. I blinked. I could get raw power from signing in. Use it. In an instant, my aura exploded. The sound of breaking bottlenecks echoed in my mind like thunder. When the energy finally settled, I pulled up my status. My realm had jumped to the first level of chi refining. A whole year of power had only raised me 4 stages. It was clear that my god-tier cultivation technique required an immense amount of energy to level up. Young Marquis, your mother wishes to see you, a maid's voice called from outside. I washed up and headed to her courtyard. Mother, did you sleep well? Bifeng looked at me, a soft light in her eyes. She could see the change in me over the last few days. To her, it looked like I had finally grown up because of the tragedy. I'm much better, she said. Son, yesterday was supposed to be your wedding day with Qingwu, but with everything that happened, we had to put it off. I had honestly forgotten about the engagement. Between the transmigration and the funeral, a wedding was the last thing on my mind. Mother, don't worry about it. The Marquis's house is in a precarious position. I have no heart for marriage right now. I'm glad you're thinking of the family, she sighed. But Qingwu is a rare catch. Your father's enemies are circling us like wolves. If you married her, her family's influence might make them hesitate. We'll talk about that later, I said firmly. You don't need to worry about the safety of this house. I will handle it. Meanwhile, deep within the imperial palace, the atmosphere was heavy. The Emperor of Jing sat in his study, his face a mask of imperial majesty. He looked at the old eunuch standing before him. Have you found out his origin? The emperor asked. Your Majesty, the eunuch, Lianing, bowed low. I can find nothing. It is as if the man appeared out of thin air. Even you can't find him? Interesting, the emperor mused. Lin Zhantian was a 9th-level grandmaster. It makes sense he would leave a shadow guard for his son. What is the man's cultivation? Lianing hesitated. I tried to slip into the Marquis's estate last night to investigate. I was detected before I even crossed the wall. I retreated to avoid making a scene, but I am certain his cultivation is not lower than mine. The emperor's eye sharpened. Lianing was one of the oldest and most powerful grandmasters in the kingdom. For someone to detect him so easily was a major problem. First the massacre on the street, and now this, the emperor whispered, looking at the carved pillars of his hall. Keep watching. I want to see exactly how many cards the House of the Champion Marquis is still holding. Lianing bowed low and retreated from the emperor's study. The emperor stood by the window, his eyes overlooking the vast imperial palace. He whispered to the empty air, wondering if Lin Zhantian ever expected his son to reveal his hidden trump card so quickly. I left my mother's room and headed straight for the Marquis Estate's library. The original owner of this body was a useless playboy who knew next to nothing about the world we lived in, the Tianwu continent. I needed to change that. The library was a 2-story building filled with rows of ancient scrolls. The second floor held cultivation techniques, but I didn't even bother going up. With the Huangdao Xinyuan art and the 10,000 sword souls in my possession, the low-level manuals upstairs were nothing but trash to me. I searched the first floor until a book titled The Tianwu Travel Records caught my eye. I flipped it open, and the scale of this world finally began to sink in. 1,000 years ago, a massive war between the strongest cultivators had torn the continent apart. The fighting lasted a century, wiping out entire sects and leaving the land divided into 5 massive regions: the East, the West Wasteland, the North, the South, and the Central Province. The Central Province was the heart of the world, rich in energy and wealth. The West was a dangerous territory ruled by the demon race, where humans rarely survived. My home, the Great Jing Dynasty, sat in the far northwest of the North region. We were a small, weak kingdom under the thumb of the Batian Empire. We paid tribute every year just to stay alive, and the empire didn't care if we fought wars with our neighbors as long as the gold kept flowing. My father had died fighting one of those neighbors, the Great Wei Dynasty. Closing the book, I felt a surge of heat in my chest. This world was vast, brutal, and full of opportunities. I wanted to conquer it. I wanted to see everything it had to offer. I put the book back and returned to my courtyard, where Jian Wei was waiting for me. He looked more serious than usual. He told me that a powerful presence had tried to scout the estate last night. I wasn't surprised. After the massacre I ordered on the streets, the wolves were bound to come sniffing around. When I asked how the intruder compared to him, Jian Wei admitted they were roughly equal. Don't worry about it for now, I told him. Just keep the estate secure. If the intruder had retreated without attacking, it meant they were cautious. I just needed time to grow. Once my secret organization, the Soul-Breaking Hall, was strong enough, I would be the one doing the hunting. That night, I sat cross-legged on my bed and began to circulate the Huangdao Xinyuan art. The spiritual energy in the air turned into a vortex, rushing into my body. Outside, the city was alive with noise, but my room was deathly silent. Suddenly, a shock wave erupted from my body, rattling the furniture and knocking over my tea set. I opened my eyes and exhaled a breath of turbid air. I had reached the 2nd level of qi refining. The next morning, I woke up feeling more refreshed than I had in years. I had spent my previous life alone, but here, I had a mother and a legacy to protect. I wouldn't let anyone take that away from me. System, I whispered, sign in. The chime rang in my head. I had one big The reward was 500 Jinui guards, including a commander named Shen Lian. In an instant, the courtyard was filled with men wearing flying fish robes, their embroidered uniforms shimmering and their blades cold. Shen Lian stepped forward and knelt. He was a 9th-level grandmaster. Even the weakest of the 500 guards was at the 5th level of Qi refining. This was the backbone I needed. With these men, the soul-breaking hall would expand at lightning speed. I ordered Shen Lian to take 450 of his men to find Black Wuchang and begin their work in the shadows. I kept 50 guards behind to fortify the estate. When the old butler, Li Bo, saw the new guards, his jaw hit the floor. He stammered, asking where they came from. I gave him a simple excuse, telling him I had recruited them to ensure our safety. He didn't push for more details. Instead, I saw his eyes turn red with emotion. He looked at me as if he were seeing my father's ghost. He was proud that I was finally taking my responsibilities seriously. Li Bo, I said, looking at the man who had served my family for decades. I will protect the Lin house. I promise you that. The old man nodded, tears streaming down his face. He whispered that the late Marquis would be happy to see the man I had become. I watched him walk away, knowing that the game had truly begun. Li Bo wiped the moisture from his eyes and nodded heavily. He led the 50 guards away to secure the estate. I watched them go, my mind already turning to the next task. I needed to see my mother, but before I could even wash up, a round, chubby figure came sprinting toward me from the distance. Brother Yuan, are you okay? The man was panting hard, his face flushed. My dad finally let me out of the house today. As soon as I heard about Uncle Lin, I ran straight here. I looked at the fat guy in front of me and felt a rare spark of warmth in my chest. This was Chen Gong. According to my predecessor's memories, we had grown up together. He was the eldest son of Duke Chun, and his talent for cultivation was just as pathetic as mine used to be. We were the two greatest menaces of the capital. We used to peek at widows bathing, spend our nights in brothels, and bully anyone who crossed us. His father had finally reached his breaking point and locked him up for a full month. He had only been released today. I'm fine, I said, offering a small smile. Thanks for coming. Chen Gong let out a long breath of relief. I was worried you'd do something stupid. I came to cheer you up. He walked into my room like he owned the place, poured himself a cup of water, and gulped it down. I shook my head and followed him inside. Let's go out, Chen Gong suggested, setting the cup down. The old man kept me cooped up for a month. I'm dying for some fresh air. I thought about it. I hadn't actually seen much of this world yet. All right, let's go. We left the Marquis' estate, walking shoulder to shoulder. I knew Jian Wei was trailing us silently in the shadows. There was something about Chen Gong's energy that made me feel genuinely relaxed. The streets were packed. I saw warriors carrying heavy blades, scholars in elegant robes, and vendors shouting over the crowd. In this world, martial arts were everything, but not everyone was born for it. Those without talent or money had to bury their heads in books, hoping to earn a government post to bring honor to their families. As Chen Gong and I swaggered down the street, the crowd parted like we were the plague. People pointed and whispered, keeping their distance. Chen Gong didn't care at all. I felt a little awkward, but I kept my face neutral. Suddenly, a commotion broke out ahead. A large crowd had gathered, circling something. Come on, let's see what's happening. Chen Gong grabbed my arm and started running. In the center of the crowd, a scrawny, monkey-faced teenager was pointing aggressively at two girls. You little brat, it's your luck that I've taken an interest in you. Don't push your luck. The girl he was shouting at was pale with fear. Her maid, though trembling, stood firmly in front of her. Get this dead maid out of my way. The boy barked at his servants. In broad daylight. What do you think you're doing? The maid stammered. The servants made quick work of her, dragging her away and throwing her to the ground. Miss, run, she screamed. The young lady tried to grab her maid and bolt, but the servants surrounded them instantly. The monkey-faced boy smirked, his eyes filled with lust. Run? Where do you think you're going? I recognized him immediately. His name was Sun Xiangho. He was one of the many friends who used to drag my predecessor out to drink. More importantly, his father was a deputy general under Du Changchun, the man who had been eyeing my family's position. He was nothing but a lapdog for Du's son. If I was going to clean up the capital, I might as well start with him. In broad daylight, under the bright sun, you're kidnapping women in the street. I called out, pushing through the crowd. Is there no justice left? Is there no law? Sun Xiangho turned around, looking annoyed. When he saw it was me, his expression turned into a sneer. Oh, if it isn't the little Marquis. Your father hasn't even been dead for a week, and you already can't stay in the house. A flash of killing intent crossed my mind. You're just a dog for the Du family, I said, my voice cold and loud enough for everyone to hear. A frog trying to act like a prince. Who do you think you're fooling? The crowd started snickering. Sun Xiangho's face turned a nasty shade of purple. Being called a dog in public was a massive insult. Lin Yuan, you think you're still the same person you were, he hissed. Your days are numbered. I don't care who I am, I replied. But a dog like you shouldn't be out here barking at innocent girls. It's bad manners. Sun Xiangho snapped. His face twisted with rage. Lin Yuan, you're asking for death. Get him. Just don't kill him yet. His thugs moved in. I looked at the surrounding crowd and smiled. Everyone witnessed this. He's the one who started it. If I kill him, it's his own fault, right? The crowd looked at me like I was crazy. Some tried to hide their laughter, their faces turning red from the effort. As the thugs surrounded me, I felt the urge to test my own strength on them, but I held back. To the world, I was still a useless playboy. It wasn't time to show my hand yet. Dian Wei, I whispered. Kill them all. Dian Wei blurred into motion. He struck like a wolf among sheep. One punch, one body. He moved so fast the thugs didn't even have time to scream. Within seconds, every single one of them was dead on the ground. Sun Xiangho's eyes nearly popped out of his head. His legs began to shake uncontrollably. Kill him too, I said flatly. No, you can't, Sun Xiangho shrieked. If you kill me, young Master Du will never. The threat died in his throat. Dian Wei stepped forward and snapped his neck like a dry twig. I looked down at his body. If you're a dog, stay home and guard the house. If you come out to bite people, don't be surprised when someone puts you down. The two girls were shaking, their mouths hanging open. They had never seen such casual violence. The crowd realized what had happened and began to scatter in a panic. Within a minute, the busy street was empty, leaving only me, Chen Gong, Dian Wei, and the two terrified girls. Chen Gong looked at me, his expression complicated. I could tell he felt like he was looking at a stranger. Go home, I told the girls, and bring more guards next time. They stammered a thank you and hurried away. Yuan, we need to leave, Chen Gong said, his voice urgent. The city guard will be here any second. You go, I said. This has nothing to do with you. I'll wait here. I had killed Sun Xiangho on purpose. I wanted to see who my real enemies were. The people I killed before were nobodies, but Sun was the son of a high-ranking official. This would force the hidden players to show their faces. Chen Gong hesitated, torn between fear and loyalty. Finally, he squared his shoulders and stayed by my side. We didn't have to wait long. The city guard arrived within minutes. A dozen men swarmed the scene, their leader skidding to a halt. He looked at the bodies on the ground, his brow furrowing into a deep knot of anxiety. Young Marquis, the leader said, his voice trembling as he looked at me. Did you do this? I did, I replied calmly. But Sun Xiangho's men attacked me first. I was simply defending myself. The guard leader looked stuck. He didn't dare arrest me. If he had known I was the one causing the trouble, he probably wouldn't have shown up at all. He knew my reputation, and he knew my family's name, even if my father was gone. Clean up the bodies, I said, turning away without waiting for an answer. I'm going home. The leader didn't try to stop me. He gritted his teeth and ordered his men to carry the corpses away and notify the Sun family to claim their dead. When Sun Xiangho's father, heard the news, he went berserk. He was like a wounded bear, smashing everything in his room until it was a pile of splinters and shards. Lin Yuan, he roared, his voice thick with hatred. If I don't kill you, I am not fit to be a father. He left his house immediately, heading straight for the estate of the Marquis of Jinan. Meanwhile, in the imperial palace, the news reached the emperor. He sat in his study, lazily flipping through a book. So, Lin Yuan killed Sun Xiong's son? He asked, his voice indifferent. Yes, your majesty. The old eunuch Lianing replied with a low bow. And how did Sun Xiong react? He trashed his house and went straight to the Marquis of Jinan, Lianing reported. The emperor let out a soft, cold laugh and set his book down. Good. Let them fight like dogs. We'll just watch. At the Jinan Marquis estate, Sun Xiong was falling apart. His eyes were bloodshot as he grabbed the Marquis's arm. My lord, you have to help me. You have to kill that little beast for me. Calm down, Du Changchun, the Marquis of Jinan said firmly. I understand your pain, but we don't know the full strength of the champion Marquis's estate yet. No one knows how many trump cards Lin Zhantian left behind. If we rush in now, we'll just be doing someone else's dirty work. He patted Sun Xiong's shoulder, his eyes narrowing. Don't worry, I will help you get your revenge. But for now, we wait. Everyone is waiting to see who strikes first so they can play the role of the mantis stalking the cicada. We need to know their true power before we move. Sun Xiong finally calmed down enough to nod. You are wise, my lord. Go home, Du Changchun warned. And whatever you do, don't go to the Lin estate to seek death on your own. I returned to my estate, paid my respects to my mother, and went straight to my courtyard to continue my cultivation. Time blurred as I focused on my energy. Before I knew it, night had fallen. A soft knock came at my door. I opened my eyes and stepped outside. What is it? Dianwei stood there, his head bowed. 3 groups tried to break into the estate tonight, master. The strongest among them was at the 9th level of the Xiantian realm. Where are they? I asked. They died before they could even step foot inside the inner courtyard, Dianwei replied. I didn't blame him for the kills. Tell Black Wuchang and Shun Lian to find out who sent them. Dianwei vanished into the shadows. I looked out into the dark night. People were already losing their patience. I just hoped they were ready for my anger when the time came. The next morning, I woke up and immediately thought of my daily sign-in. Ding! Sign-in successful. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the God-grade Suwang sword. My heart leaped. The Suwang sword. It was a legendary blade from the world of Snow Middle Strategic Path, ranked 2nd among the 10 greatest swords. It was said to be so sharp it could cut through anything. Suddenly, a magnificent sword appeared in my hand. Even in its scabbard, I could feel the biting chill of its edge. As I gripped the hilt, the blade vibrated, letting out a low hum as if it recognized me as its master. I drew the sword. The sound of steel singing filled the air. I moved through the forms of the 10,000 swords, returning to the ancestor technique. The courtyard was filled with the whistling of air as my sword chi sliced through falling leaves, turning them into dust before they hit the ground. What a sword, I whispered, running my fingers along the cold metal before sheathing it and storing it back in my system space. A maid arrived with water for me to wash my face. She kept stealing glances at me, her eyes full of confusion. I knew the servants were gossiping about how much I had changed. The old Lin Yuan was a nightmare who beat them for the smallest mistakes. Now, I was a stranger to them. Far to the north, in the Luoyun sect, one of the 3 great sects of the Great Jing dynasty, a young man bowed to his master. Master, I have been away from home for 3 years. I wish to return, he said. The old man nodded. Du Zixian, you have reached the Grandmaster realm. It is time for you to gain experience in the world. Give my regards to your father. This was Du Zixian, the 2nd son of the Marquis of Jinan. He was far more talented than his brother, Du Ziding, and had been sent away to train years ago. To the south, in the misty valleys of the ethereal immortal sect, a cold-voiced woman spoke to her disciple. Ming'er, your senior sister's wedding plans have been delayed. Go to the capital, find her, and use the opportunity to travel. Yes, master, the girl replied, trying to hide the excitement on her face. This sect only took female disciples, making them unique among the big 3. And to the east, in the Royal Mountains, stood the Xiantian sword sect. They were the strongest of the 3 and had been allies of the royal family since the founding of the dynasty. Disciple, you are now a grandmaster, a white-haired elder told a young man whose aura was as sharp as an unsheathed blade. It is time to return and help your father. Yes, master, the young man replied. He was Jing Tianhong, the crown prince of the great Jing dynasty. By noon, I had finished lunch with my mother and returned to my room. Black Wuchang was already waiting for me. Did you find them? I asked. Two of the groups were sent by the Marquis of Jinan and the Marquis of Jinshi, Black Wuchang reported. The third group, we haven't identified them yet. Keep looking, I ordered. After he left, I sat in silence. I wasn't surprised by the Marquis of Jinan, but the Marquis of Jinshi was a new variable. He spent most of his time on the northwest border and rarely came to the capital. Was it his son's doing? But the third group bothered me the most. Black Wuchang and Shun Lian were both great grandmasters, top-tier experts in this kingdom. If even they couldn't trace the origin of those intruders, then I was dealing with someone much more dangerous than a local official. A heavy sense of urgency settled in my chest. I needed to get stronger, and I needed to do it fast. I needed to focus on my cultivation. There was no other way. I sat cross-legged on my bed and began the slow, tedious process of circulating my energy. While I was lost in my training, two guests arrived at the estate. They went straight to my mother's courtyard. My mother, by phone, rarely smiled these days, but her face lit up when she saw them. The visitors were Hua Yueyun, the wife of the Minister of Revenue, and her daughter, Xia Qingwu. Hua Yueyun was my mother's closest friend. They shared a long history, and seeing her brought a rare moment of peace to our home. Sister, I'm so glad you're okay, Hua Yueyun said, holding my mother's hand. My mother smiled warmly, but then her gaze shifted to Xia Qingwu. Qingwu, dear, because of what happened to your Uncle Lin, your wedding with my son was delayed. Your mother is here now, so we should pick a new auspicious date soon. I saw Xia Qingwu's shoulders tremble for a split second. She regained her composure quickly, but the hesitation was there. I will follow whatever you and my mother decide, Xia Qingwu replied softly. She was sacrificing herself. I knew it. She didn't want to marry a notorious playboy like me, but for the sake of her father's reputation and the honor of the Xia family, she was willing to endure it. Go call Yuan here, my mother told a maid. A few minutes later, the maid interrupted my cultivation. I headed to the main hall, wondering what was so urgent. I walked in and saw the two women. Mother, you called for me? I asked. Come here, son. Greet your Aunt Hua, my mother said. I searched my memories and realized who they were. I bowed politely. Greetings, Aunt Hua. Hua Yueyun looked at me with a complicated expression. She knew her daughter was miserable about the engagement, but her husband couldn't afford to be seen as a man who broke his word to a fallen hero's family. Why don't you take Qingwu for a walk in the garden? My mother suggested, clearly trying to play matchmaker. Your aunt and I have things to discuss. I nodded and led the way out. Xia Qingwu hesitated, then followed a few paces behind me. The walk was painfully awkward. Neither of us spoke. I took a sideways glance at her, something I hadn't felt comfortable doing back in the hall. She was breathtaking. Her face was perfect, like it had been carved by a master artist from the finest jade. She wore a white dress that made her look like a cold immortal who had descended from the heavens. Her aura was icy, practically radiating a stay-away vibe to the entire world. She's almost good enough for me, I thought shamelessly. She must have noticed me staring because her expression tightened. I could tell she was calling me a lecher in her head. Let's sit in the pavilion, I said. She nodded silently. After the maid served tea and left us alone, I decided to be blunt. I wasn't interested in playing games. I don't think this marriage needs to happen, I said. She froze. You clearly don't like me, I continued. And to be honest, I don't like you either. You're beautiful, sure, but why force ourselves into this? It's better if we just call it off. I wasn't trying to be reverse psychology cool. I just didn't want to live with a human ice block for the rest of my life. Xia Qingwu's cold mask finally cracked. She frowned, looking at me with deep suspicion. She knew my reputation. She didn't believe a word coming out of my mouth. I don't want to marry you, she said, her voice like ringing silver. But do you really expect me to believe you'd give up this chance? I knew what she meant. She thought I was a creep who wouldn't let go of a prize like her. You're overthinking it, I said, leaning back. I'm telling you the truth. I'm not the type to be a licking dog. She blinked, looking confused. Hey, licking dog? What is that? Don't worry about it, I muttered. Just know that I won't force you into this. I'm not a simp. She looked at me with genuine pity now. She probably thought the shock of my father's death had turned me into an idiot. Stop talking nonsense, she said, her voice turning sharp. I don't care what your angle is. I agreed to this marriage for my father and for your late father. If you have any shred of respect left for your family, you'll stop playing tricks and focus on protecting your mother and this house. She stood up and walked away without looking back. I sat there, stunned. I was trying to give her an out, and she lectured me for it? In every story I'd ever read, this was the part where the girl happily accepts the breakup. Why was she insisting on the marriage? I sat in that pavilion for a long time, my head hurting from the sheer absurdity of it all. Eventually, a maid came to get me. "Young master, the mistress wants to see you." I went back to my mother's room and immediately started complaining. "Mother, is Xia Qingwu crazy? I told her I didn't want to marry her, and she acted like I was insulting her father's honor." My mother sighed and gave me a stern look. "You foolish boy. Our family isn't what it used to be. The fact that she's still willing to marry you shows she's a girl of high character and loyalty. I know she's a good person, mother, but she's so cold. It's like living with an iceberg." My mother laughed softly. "Love grows over time, you honor. You'll see." I realized I couldn't win this argument. I couldn't exactly tell her I was from another world where people chose who they loved. It just wasn't going to click. Seeing my silence, my mother assumed I'd given in. "Good," she said. "Tomorrow is Qingwu's 19th birthday. You should prepare something special. Make sure you pick out a truly valuable gift and take it to the Xia estate for her birthday," my mother reminded me. Seeing how much she genuinely liked Xia Qingwu, I didn't argue. I didn't want to cause her any more stress. My father's death had been a massive blow to her, and I'd only just started seeing her smile again over the last 2 days. I wasn't about to ruin that. If I couldn't get out of this marriage right now, I'd just have to let nature take its course. I stopped overthinking it. After having dinner with my mother, I headed back to my courtyard to focus on my cultivation. When the sun rose the next morning, I felt that familiar spark of excitement. It was time for my daily sign-in. "System," I called out. "Sign in." Ding. Sign-in successful. "Congratulations, host. You have received a heaven-grade high-tier spiritual weapon, the Flowing Cloud Hairpin." The description popped up in my mind. It was a masterpiece designed to calm the mind and keep the wearer's inner spirit clear, perfect for preventing cultivation deviations. It could also be used as a weapon in a pinch. A second later, a blue and white hairpin appeared in my hand. It was cool to the touch, with a faint, beautiful shimmer dancing across its surface. I felt a bit deflated. What was I supposed to do with this? It was clearly meant for a woman. I tossed it into my system space and forgot about it. The moment I opened my door, 2 maids startled me. "Young Marquis, the mistress sent us to help you dress for the day." I looked at the elaborate robes in their hands and my eye twitched. It took them half an hour. By the time they were done, I was draped in moon-white brocade. I looked sharp, spirited, and carried an air of effortless grace. The 2 little maids kept stealing glances at me, their faces turning bright red before they quickly looked away. Before I could leave, my mother, by phone, pulled me aside for one last lecture. The gist was simple: don't be a brat, and don't embarrass the family. I promised her I'd be on my best behavior. I went to the estate's treasury, picked out a random gift, and headed out with Dianwei. A carriage was already waiting at the gates. I hopped inside while Dianwei and the driver sat up front. When we pulled up to the Xia estate, I heard a familiar shout before I even stepped out. "Brother Yuan." I opened the curtain and jumped down. It was Chun Wei, the chubby friend of the original Lin Yuan. "Fatty, you're here early. I was waiting specifically for you," Chun Wei whispered, leaning in close. "Du Zixian, the second son of the Marquis of Jinnan, is back. He's coming today. You need to be careful." I searched my memories for the name. Du Zixian and I definitely had some history, mostly bad. I just smiled. It's fine. If he's looking for a death wish, I'll grant it. Seeing my confidence, Chun Wei relaxed a little. But just as we were about to walk through the gates, a mocking voice rang out behind us. "Well, if it isn't the little Marquis Lin." I turned around. "Oh, it's Du Ziting." I used a play on his name that sounded like stomachache in Chinese. "If your stomach hurts that bad, shouldn't you stay home on the toilet? Why are you out in public?" Du Ziting's face turned purple. He pointed a finger at me, speechless with rage. I didn't realize that after 3 years, you'd still be nothing but a loud mouth. A younger man standing next to him snapped, stepping forward to defend his brother. "Aside from talking, you're still completely useless." I squinted at him, looking unimpressed. "And who are you?" "I'm talking to your brother." Since when do you have the right to interrupt? Did the Marquis of Jinan forget to teach you manners? You. Du Zixian was fuming now. I hadn't even looked him in the eye. He forced himself to calm down and sneered. If you're a man, accept my challenge. Don't just hide behind your words like a coward. I glanced at him. This one was definitely sharper than his older brother. He knew how to play to his strengths. But I wasn't an idiot. If he was confident enough to challenge me, his cultivation level was likely much higher than mine. I don't have time to play soldier with you, I said dismissively. Trash, Du Zixian spat, looking away as if looking at me would stain his eyes. I almost signaled Dian Wei to break his legs right then and there, but I held back. It was the Xia family's big day. Starting a brawl at the entrance was bad form. I gave him one last look. If he pushed me again, I was letting Dian Wei loose. The crown prince has arrived, someone shouted. A carriage pulled up and a young man stepped out. The crowd of young nobles immediately bowed. Greetings, Your Highness. No need for formalities, Jing Tianhong said with a polite, easy smile. Why is everyone standing around out here? The crowd looked awkwardly between me and the Du brothers. Du Ziding bowed deeply, while Du Zixian gave a somewhat lazy salute. Jing Tianhong just nodded to them graciously. The moment I saw him looking toward me, I turned my back and walked straight into the Xia estate. In the original Lin Yuan's memory, Jing Tianhong was a man of deep schemes, a total hypocrite. I had zero interest in wasting my breath on him. As I walked away, a flash of murderous intent crossed Jing Tianhong's eyes, though it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He went back to smiling and invited everyone inside. Inside, Xia Yunsheng, Xia Qingwu's father, came out to greet the guests. Uncle Xia, I said, greeting him. Ah, you honor. Make yourself at home. I have to go welcome the prince, he said hurriedly before rushing toward the entrance. I wandered through the estate with Chun Wei and Dian Wei. I'd been here many times as a kid, so I knew the layout well. We followed the servants carrying trays of food into the grand banquet hall. It was mostly empty, except for the staff and one young girl. She was being very suspicious, sneaking a piece of pastry into her sleeve like a common thief. What are you hiding there? I asked, sneaking up behind her. Ah. She jumped, nearly dropping the snack. She turned around, huffing with indignation. Don't you know you could scare someone to death like that? Now that she was facing me, I got a good look at her. She looked about 16, wearing a green floral dress. She had a cute, round face with a bit of baby fat on her cheeks. My apologies, I said, trying to look sorry. I was just curious what you were tucking away. Shoo, keep your voice down, she hissed, looking around nervously. My senior sister doesn't let me eat too much, but I get hungry so fast after meals. I had no choice but to sneak in here for a snack. I chuckled. I see. And what's your name? Just call me Menger. I have to go. My sister will be looking for me. Don't you dare tell anyone about the food. She scurried out of the hall as fast as her legs could carry her. I shook my head and found a seat. Chen Wei sat beside me, while Dian Wei stood guard behind my chair. A few minutes later, Xia Yunsheng led the rest of the guests inside. Meanwhile, in the back of the estate, four girls were chatting in Xia Qingwu's private room. Xia Qingwu didn't have many friends because of her cold personality, so she had only invited those she was closest to. Qingwu, one of the girls said, leaning in. I heard your fiancé just gave the Du brothers a massive verbal beatdown at the front gate. Xia Qingwu didn't react. She just sat there in silence, listening. The four girls knew Xia Qingwu's cold personality, so they didn't take offense at her silence. Instead, they dove straight into gossiping about me, Du Zixian, and Jing Tianhong. It didn't matter if it was my past life or this ancient world. Gossip was clearly hardwired into human DNA. Even Xia Qingwu listened intently, though she kept her mouth shut. Suddenly, a crisp voice like a yellow warbler broke the silence. Senior sister. It was the girl I'd met earlier. Xia Qingwu looked up. Menger, where have you been? I just went to the front courtyard to look around. There are so many people, Menger said, conveniently leaving out the part where she was stuffing her face with snacks. Xia Qingwu rolled her eyes. Could you at least wipe your mouth after you eat? Menger's eyes went wide. She slapped a hand over her mouth, looking guilty as charged. I can already see it, Xia Qingwu sighed, clearly frustrated by her little junior sister. Does covering your mouth now really help? Sister, I was just so hungry, Manga pouted. I saw the pastries and I couldn't help myself. Just stay here and stop running around, Xia Qingwu commanded. Manga actually listened to her and immediately joined the other 4 girls in their gossip session. The courtyard was soon filled with their bright, ringing laughter. Meanwhile, back in the banquet hall, I was busy tasting the local wine. It wasn't bad, though a bit weak for my taste. Xia Yinsheng led Prince Jing Tianhong and his entourage into the room. Everyone took their seats according to their status. Your Highness, please, make yourselves at home, Xia Yinsheng said, bowing slightly. My daughter will be out shortly. I won't overstay my welcome. This is a gathering for you young people, and an old man like me would only get in the way. Before he left, he shot me a worried look. I gave him a subtle, reassuring nod. Once he was gone, Jing Tianhong narrowed his eyes at me. Brother Lin, he said with a fake smile. Why are you drinking all by yourself? I'm thirsty, I replied. I really didn't feel like talking to this guy. How interesting, he chuckled. Using wine to quench thirst. The room went quiet. Everyone looked at me like I was an idiot. They could all tell the tension between me and the crown prince was thick enough to cut with a knife. In the great Jing dynasty, offending the prince was basically a death wish, but nobody spoke up. They were happy to watch the show, but they didn't want to get caught in the crossfire. Why? Does the crown prince have a problem with that? I asked arrogantly. He looked a bit embarrassed by my bluntness. Haha, not at all. I'm just impressed by your tolerance for alcohol. Your Highness doesn't know. Du Zixin piped up, trying to save face for the prince. The young Marquis's tolerance comes from years of practice in the brothels every night. I truly envy your lifestyle then, Brother Lin, Jing Tianhong added, seizing the chance to mock me. I ignored them both and took another sip. Barking dogs don't bite. If they push me too far, I'd just let Dianwei loose on them. I didn't care if he was a prince or a commoner. Seeing that I wasn't biting, Jing Tianhong turned to talk to someone else. Suddenly, 6 beautiful figures entered the hall. The woman in the lead wore a veil and carried an aura of cold elegance. Every eye in the room was glued to them. I spotted Xia Qingwu and that little glutton Ming. I let out a small laugh and went back to my wine. To me, the drink was more interesting than the women. Thank you all for waiting, Xia Qingwu said. Her voice was like a winter breeze, instantly snapping everyone out of their daze. Thank you for coming to celebrate my birthday. Please forgive any lack of hospitality. She took her seat, and Jing Tianhong was the first to jump up. Miss Xia, I've specially selected a gift for you. He pulled out a beautifully wrapped box. When he opened it, the room gasped. A mystic tool, someone shouted. Indeed, Jing Tianhong said proudly. This is the heart-clearing bracelet. It keeps the mind calm and the spirit clear. The room erupted in flattery. Everyone was impressed by the prince's generosity. Xia Qingwu, however, looked unmoved. Thank you, Your Highness, but this is far too precious. I cannot accept it. It's not precious at all, he insisted. In fact, the bracelet is honored to be worn by you. I felt my lip twitch at his cheesy line. Xia Qingwu stopped arguing, and the prince, taking her silence as a win, handed the gift to a maid. After that, everyone else started presenting their gifts, some expensive, some ordinary. Brother Lin, Jing Tianhong said, looking at me. Everyone has given their gift. You're the only one left. The prince sure worries about a lot of things for someone who eats so little, I remarked. Qingwu and I are engaged. We'll be family soon. Constant gift-giving seems a bit redundant, don't you think? The room went dead silent. Jing Tianhong's smile froze. Xia Qingwu remained calm, but I saw her eyelashes flutter. Meng'er was staring at me in shock, realizing the guy she met earlier was her sister's fiancé. Even if you have an engagement, you aren't married yet, Jing Tianhong said awkwardly, trying to recover. A gift is still required. He was clearly trying to embarrass me, thinking I had nothing. Little did he know, my daily sign-in reward this morning was a high-level weapon for women. Well, I said, for once, the prince is right. A gift is necessary. I reached into my robe, pretending to pull something out, but I actually retrieved it from my system inventory. When I revealed the item, the entire room froze in shock. It was a hairbrush, the flowing cloud hairpin. Its surface shimmered with a divine glow. That's an Earth-grade weapon, someone screamed. I've seen one before. That aura is unmistakable. In the great Jing dynasty, Earth-grade tools were incredibly rare, usually held only by top-tier sects or masters. Good eye, I said, enjoying the moment of shock. This is the flowing cloud hairpin. High Earth-grade. It calms the mind, prevents cultivation backlash, and can even be used for defense. Jing Tianhong's face turned a nasty shade of bruised purple. He knew Earth-grade weapons. He knew he had lost this round completely. The girls standing behind Xia Qingwu looked at the hairpin with pure, unadulterated envy. I could tell, this was the ultimate flex. The flowing cloud hairpin was stunning. It was an Earth-grade divine weapon, and in this world, nobody could easily turn that down. Xia Qingwu stared at me, her eyes deep and searching. I could tell what she was thinking. She probably assumed this was a relic from my mother, by phone. After all, in everyone's eyes, I was just a useless playboy. How could I possibly own an Earth-grade treasure myself? Senior sister, young Master Lin is so good to you, Meng'er whispered, her voice thick with envy. He just gave away an Earth-grade weapon like it was nothing. After I pulled out that hairpin and crushed the room's expectations, nobody dared to bring up the gifts again. They were too afraid of Jing Tianhong. The prince's face was so dark I thought he might actually kill someone. His lackey, Du Ziting, saw the tension and his eyes started darting around, looking for a way to regain ground. Our great Jing dynasty was founded on martial arts, Du Ziting announced suddenly. Since we're all gathered here, why don't we head to the martial arts arena to exchange some pointers? The suggestion was met with instant approval from the other guests. Even Jing Tianhong's expression softened as he gave Du Ziting an appreciative look. They all knew I was a waste who couldn't cultivate. They wanted to get me on that stage and beat me senseless to reclaim their dignity. Du Ziting was beaming, clearly feeling like the smartest man in the room. Xia Qingwu knew exactly what they were planning. She looked at me, but when she saw how calm and indifferent I remained, a strange thought crossed her mind. She actually wondered if I had a way to handle them. The crowd surged toward the arena. I trailed behind at a leisurely pace. My fat friend, Chung, leaned in close, his face full of worry. Brother Yuan, if they challenge you, don't you dare go up there. It's a trap. I let out a soft laugh. Fatty, do I look like an idiot to you? He shook his head. Then there you go, I said. Du Ziting was the first to jump onto the stage. He pointed a finger at me, smug as could be. Young Marquis, how about we have a little match? I looked at him like he was a bug. Everyone in the capital knows I can't cultivate. Where do you get this sense of superiority, coming here to challenge me with a straight face? I said it plainly, showing no shame about my supposed lack of cultivation. Du Ziting choked. He didn't expect me to be so thick-skinned. I didn't care about face at all. Tell you what, I continued. Beat my guard, Jianwei, first. If you win, I'll accept your challenge. Even if you beat me to death, I won't complain. Of course, if you're scared, you can find someone else to fight him for you. As long as Jianwei loses, I'll step up. Du Ziting's face turned a nasty shade of green. He had seen Jianwei's power before. He knew he wasn't a match. As for finding someone else, in the entire southern Marquis estate, probably only his father could stand a chance against Jianwei. Forget it. Du Ziting spat, jumping down from the stage. If you're too scared to fight, then don't bother with the excuses. I watched him walk away, feeling a bit disappointed. I was hoping he'd be stupid enough to agree so I could settle him right then and there. But he was a coward. With Du Ziting's failure, no one else stepped up. Even Jing Tianhong stayed quiet. He could sense a dangerous aura coming from Jianwei. The party ended shortly after that. The guests offered their hollow goodbyes and left. As I turned to leave with Fatty and Jianwei, Xia Qingwu's cold voice stopped me. Wait. I turned around. What is it? She held out the flowing cloud hairpin. Take this back. Give it to Auntie Bai. I gave it to you, I said simply. Besides, it's not my mother's. It's mine. I didn't wait for her response. I turned and walked out of the Xia estate. Behind me, I could feel her staring at my back, her brow furrowed in confusion. Back at my own estate, I met with Black Wuchang in the shadows of my courtyard. My lord, we've tracked them, Black Wuchang reported respectfully. That group belongs to the imperial family. I raised an eyebrow. So the royals are involved too? Interesting. I hadn't expected the emperor's shadow to be this long. Keep watching them. I want to know their next move. Once he vanished, I went back to my room to cultivate. Meanwhile, at the Xia estate, Xia Yunsheng was looking at the hairpin in his daughter's hand with disbelief. Are you saying Lin Yuan gave you this Earth-grade weapon? Yes, Xia Qingwu replied. I tried to return it, but he said it was his, not his mother's. If he won't take it back, keep it for now, her father said. We can ask your auntie by next time we see her. But tell me, do you feel like he's different now? Xia Qingwu shook her head. We played together as kids, but I haven't seen much of him lately. I can't tell. Maybe I'm overthinking it, Xia Yunsheng sighed. He hesitated for a moment, then looked at her sadly. Daughter, your auntie sent a message today. 3 days from now is an auspicious day. Xia Qingwu went still. I understand, father. In 3 days, I will marry into the champion marquis estate. Even though she prided herself on being calm, the thought of marrying a man she didn't love made her heart heavy. Her father reached out, his voice firm. Don't force yourself. If you don't want this, I'll throw away my pride and go to the marquis estate to break the engagement myself. No, she said stubbornly. You've lived your life with honor. I won't let you ruin your reputation for me. I wouldn't be happy even if the wedding was canceled. Xia Yunsheng looked at his daughter, tears welling in his eyes. Back at my place, I was having dinner when my mother dropped the bomb. Son, I've set your wedding date with Qingwu for 3 days from now. Tomorrow, you'll take the betrothal gifts to the Xia estate. I nearly choked on my food. Wait, mother, don't I get a say in this? I'm your mother, Bai Feng said firmly. In this world, parents decide. There's nothing to discuss. I realized then that this wasn't Earth. Resistance was futile. I nodded, resigned to my fate. I figured we could just sleep in separate rooms and stay out of each other's way. I went back to my courtyard, feeling restless. I sat in a chair under the moonlight, staring at the stars until I eventually drifted off. The morning sun woke me up, warming my face. I stretched my stiff limbs and called out to the only thing that mattered. System, sign in. This was the moment I looked forward to every day. Ding. Sign in successful. Congratulations, host. You have received 10 years of cultivation power. My eyes widened. 10 years of power? That was a decade of hard work delivered in an instant. Merge it, I commanded. Immediately, a massive surge of energy flooded my body. My aura began to climb rapidly. The sound of internal barriers breaking echoed in my ears like muffled thunder. Within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, I felt my strength reaching a whole new level. The system finally finished the transfer. I felt invincible, like I could tear open the gates of heaven with a single thought. Of course, I knew that was just an illusion caused by the sudden explosion of power. I opened my status panel to check my progress. My eyes nearly popped out of my head. My realm had jumped from the Qi refining stage all the way to the Grandmaster realm. I had spent so many days practicing and struggling, yet it couldn't compare to a few seconds of the system's help. I guess a life with cheats really doesn't need an explanation. I felt refreshed, clear-headed, and honestly pretty damn good. After my young maid finished dressing me up, I led a massive procession toward the Xia estate to deliver the betrothal gifts. We moved through the streets with grand fanfare. People stopped and stared, whispering among themselves. What is the young marquis doing? One bystander asked. You haven't heard? Another replied. My cousin is a maid at the Xia house. The young marquis and Lady Xia Qingwu are getting married in 3 days. Look at that carriage. He's definitely delivering the gifts. The townspeople were having a field day gossiping about us. Half an hour later, the procession came to a halt in front of the Xia estate. The butler led his men out to help carry the dozen heavy chests inside, while he personally escorted me into the house. Young Marquis, the master and madam are waiting for you in the living room, he said. Thank you for your hard work, I replied. To be honest, I wasn't in a great mood. I really didn't want to marry a human ice block like Xia Qingwu, but I couldn't refuse. I didn't want to break my mother's heart, so I just had to grit my teeth and push through it. Uncle Xia, Auntie Hua, I said, bowing to the 2 people sitting in the hall. You're here, Chener, Hua Yueyin replied with a warm smile. Xia Yunsheng, however, just gave a stiff nod. The room went silent. The atmosphere was incredibly heavy. Xia Yunsheng clearly wasn't happy to see me. I couldn't stand the awkwardness any longer. Look, Uncle Xia, if you're really that unwilling to marry your daughter to me, let's just call the engagement off, I suggested, hoping for an easy exit. Xia Yunsheng's face turned even darker. What kind of nonsense is that? This marriage was settled between me and your father. How can you just say forget it? I was speechless. If I marry her, he's unhappy. If I offer not to marry her, he's even angrier. What exactly did he want from me? Chener, don't mind him, Huai Weiyan said, stepping in to smooth things over. Your Uncle Xia is just feeling a bit emotional because Qingwu is leaving home soon. I understand, I said with a forced smile. Chener, Huai Weiyan continued seriously. We didn't care how much you fooled around in the past. But now that you're marrying Qingwu, you can't be so irresponsible anymore. I know, Annie. I'll protect the Marquis's estate from now on. I promised. I felt a bit guilty. Since I had taken over this guy's body, I supposed I had to take over his responsibilities too. Hearing this, Xia Yunxing's expression softened slightly, but only just. I declined their invitation for dinner and headed back home with my servants. Once I was gone, Huai Weiyan turned to her husband. Old man, Chener was right there. Couldn't you have shown him a better face? I'm doing well just by not hitting him, Xia Yunxing snapped. Do you have any idea how many terrible things that brat has done over the years? If it weren't for his father's sake, I would never let my daughter marry him. I know he was out of line before, Huai Weiyan argued. But since his father passed, he's changed. Maybe after the wedding, he'll turn his life around completely. If he ever dares to mistreat my daughter, I'll risk my old life to take him down, Xia Yunxing grumbled. Meanwhile, back in the inner courtyard, a young girl named Ming'er ran into Xia Qingwu's room. Sister, your fiancé was just here. He brought so many gifts. Xia Qingwu was practicing her swordplay. She didn't even blink. Sister, I think he's actually pretty good, Ming'er continued, ignoring the cold shoulder. He's handsome, and even though he's a marquis, he's not arrogant with the servants. Swish. The tip of Xia Qingwu's sword stopped right between Ming'er's eyes. I'll stop talking, Ming'er squeaked, swallowing hard. If you think he's so great, why don't I just marry you off to the champion marquis's estate instead? Xia Qingwu asked coldly. Sister, I'm still young. I don't want to marry yet. If you don't want to marry, then practice your sword. Or should I send you back to the sect? Ming'er turned pale. I'm practicing. I'm practicing right now. As Xia Qingwu turned away, a tiny, almost invisible smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Across town at the residence of the Marquis of Jinshi, a servant came rushing into a courtyard. Li Dan, a wealthy young man lounging in a pavilion while four beautiful women massaged him and fed him grapes, looked up lazily. What is it? Why are you shouting? Lin Yuan went to the Xia estate today. The wedding is in 3 days. What? Li Dan pushed the women aside and stood up. Is that confirmed? Absolutely certain, sir. Li Dan's eyes turned murderous. He had been obsessed with Xia Qingwu since the moment he saw her. When Lin Zhantian was alive, he didn't dare move against Lin Yuan. But now that the old man was gone, his ambitions were growing. Lin Yuan, since you want to die, I'll help you, Li Dan hissed. Have our men watch the Marquis's estate. The moment he steps outside, assassinate him. By the time I got back to my own estate, it was late and I was starving. I shoveled food into my mouth while my mother, by phone, watched me with a loving gaze. Slow down, son, she said. Mom, you should have seen Uncle Xia's face today, I said between bites. I told him we could cancel the wedding, and he nearly blew a fuse. It's hard on him, she sighed. We sat in silence for a while as I finished my meal. When I finally returned to my own courtyard, Black Wuchang appeared from the shadows. Master, several unfamiliar faces have appeared outside the estate today. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. If they want to watch, let them. I'll give them something to see. Do you want me to take care of them? Black Wuchang asked, making a throat-cutting gesture. Go ahead. Arrange it. As he vanished, I stayed there, resting. Suddenly, a chubby guy came running in, panting for breath. It was my friend, Chen Wei. Brother Lin, why are you running so fast? I asked, opening one eye. I heard you went to the Xia house today. Is it true? Are you really getting married in 3 days? I nodded slowly. Yeah, 3 days. That's great news. Chen Wei beamed, his round face lighting up with genuine joy. Brother Lin, you're finally getting what you wanted. You're actually marrying Xia Qingwu. I rolled my eyes at him. What did he mean, finally? Listen, fatty. I don't even like her anymore. Chen Wei blinked, confused. Since when? I didn't bother explaining. I just called a maid over and ordered a jar of sake. As we sat there drinking, I looked at the guy. In this strange new world, Chun-Wei was my first real friend. These past few days had shown me that he actually cared about me. If he was going to be real with me, I wasn't going to hold back either. Fatty, let's head out and roam the streets tonight, I suggested. Sure thing, Brother Lin. He squinted his eyes, a lecherous grin spreading across his face. I was just thinking about Widow Li. It's been ages since we visited her. I really miss, well, her curves. I felt my mouth twitch. Can you think about anything other than women for once in your life? He laughed it off. Brother Lin, isn't that what life is all about? I thought about it for a second. Honestly, he wasn't wrong. Fatty, do you have any big dreams? You know, an ideal life. What's an ideal? The thing you want to do most in this world. He scratched his head. Not really. Isn't playing around like this every day enough? I gave up. Talking to him about ambition was like trying to support a wall made of wet mud. He was a lost cause, but a loyal one. As night fell, the streets of the capital came alive. Street performers juggled, vendors shouted their prices, and the crowds grew thick. I led Chun-Wei out of the Marquis's estate, but the moment we stepped through the gates, I felt it. Several sets of eyes locked onto us. Being a grandmaster meant my senses were sharp enough to catch every subtle movement in the shadows. I didn't let on that I knew. I just kept strolling toward the busy main street. Behind us, the watchers exchanged looks. One slipped away to report, while the others stayed glued to our trail. Back at the Marquis of Jinshi's estate, Li Dan was pacing like a caged animal. Are you sure? Lin Yuan left with only that fat idiot Chun-Wei. Yes, young lord, his subordinate reported. We saw it with our own eyes. Good. Li Dan waved his hand, a cruel smirk crossing his face. Gather the experts. I want to see him beg for his life personally. Within minutes, 20 elite fighters from the Jinshi estate were assembled. The weakest among them was at the first level of the Xiantian realm, and their leader was a peak 9th level grandmaster. It was a terrifyingly strong lineup for a simple hit job. Move out, Li Dan commanded. Clad in black night suits, the group vanished into the darkness. Meanwhile, I was still wandering aimlessly. Chun-Wei was starting to get restless. Brother Lin, are we really not going to see Widow Li? What's so great about these streets? I was just waiting for the rats to come out of their holes. Don't be impatient. It's still early. She hasn't even started her nightly bath yet. You always think of everything, Brother Lin. After another half hour of circling, I decided the timing was right. All right, Fatty, let's go watch the widow wash up. Chun-Wei's eyes practically turned into hearts. He scrambled to keep up as I led him toward the outer city. This was the slum district, home to the poor and the powerless. Unlike the inner city, these streets were deathly silent at night. It was the perfect place for a murder. As we reached a particularly quiet stretch, I slowed my pace, waiting for the trap to spring. A second later, 20 masked men in black surrounded us. Who are you? What do you want? I asked, putting on my best terrified noble act. The masked men didn't say a word. They just tightened the circle. Poor Chun-Wei's legs were shaking so hard I thought he might collapse. Li Dan stepped out from the shadows once he was certain no guards were hiding nearby. Lin Yuan, didn't expect this, did you? I kept my voice steady. Li Dan, what are you doing? Killing you, obviously, he sneered. Did you think I came here to watch a widow bathe with you? I don't remember us having any blood feuds, I said. Give me a reason. You shouldn't have agreed to marry Xia Qingguo, he hissed, his face contorting with rage. What right does a piece of trash like you have to her? Only I deserve her. That's why you have to die. I sighed. Another cliché, killing over a woman. Is it really worth it? Why throw your life away for a girl? Isn't being alive better? I looked at him with genuine pity. Li Dan laughed, thinking I'd lost my mind. Are you scared, stupid? Your life is in my hands, you fool. I was bored of playing with him. Do it, I whispered. Before Li Dan could react, Black Wuchang emerged from the darkness with 100 men, instantly counter-surrounding the assassins. Li Dan's face went pale. He finally realized he'd been played. Kill them all, I ordered. Black Wuchang blurred into motion. He reached the 9th level Grandmaster in a heartbeat. The elite fighter didn't even last 2 moves before Black Wuchang's palm shattered his chest, killing him instantly. My shadow guards moved like a scythe through grass. It wasn't a fight, It was a massacre. In seconds, the ground was littered with bodies. Only Li Dan remained, frozen in shock. "Kill him," I said, my voice cold. I didn't care who his father was. If someone marked me for death, I returned the favor. Li Dan collapsed, his eyes wide with disbelief as the light faded from them. I didn't give him a second glance. I turned to Chen Wei, who was standing there like a statue. "So, do you still want to see the widow bathe? Or should we just go home?" Chen Wei gulped, looking at Li Dan's corpse. "Brother Lin, he was the eldest son of the Marquis of Jinshi. Killing him like this, won't there be trouble?" "Don't worry," I said calmly. "I'll handle it." Chen Wei looked at me, his expression turning solemn. "If you ever need me for anything, just say the word. I mean it." "I know. Let's go." I threw an arm around his shoulder and led him away. He kept glancing at me from the corner of his eye, clearly feeling that I was both familiar and a complete stranger. Behind us, the soul-breaking hall members moved with practiced efficiency. They hauled away the bodies and scrubbed the blood from the stone. Within minutes, the street looked like nothing had ever happened. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed. Ever since I tasted the power of system-granted cultivation, I'd become lazy about training manually. Why sweat when the system can do the work? "System, sign in," I commanded mentally. Ding. Sign in successful. "Congratulations, host. You have received the recipe for daughter's red wine." A piece of parchment appeared in my hand. I stared at it, feeling a bit let down. I wasn't a merchant. What was I supposed to do with a wine recipe? Still, I guess it was better than the shampoo I got last time. Meanwhile, at the Marquis of Jinshi's estate, Lady Yang was screaming at a servant. "What did you say? My son went to kill Lin Yuan and never came back." The servant trembled. Yes, madam. He's been gone all night." The servant finally realized that the young heir might be in serious trouble. He trembled, his voice barely a whisper as he suggested that Li Dan might have gone to the Hongyan house. It was a famous brothel, a place where Li Dan often spent his nights. Lady Yang clung to that hope. She ordered the servant to go look there immediately. Once he left, she paced the living room, her anxiety growing like a cold weight in her chest. An hour later, the servant rushed back, out of breath. He had checked every regular haunt, every den of vice, but Li Dan was nowhere to be found. Lady Yang's legs gave out, and she collapsed into a chair. She asked about Li Qin, the bodyguard, but there was no news of him either. Not a single person who had gone out with her son the previous night had returned. It felt like a physical blow to her head. She struggled to her feet, stumbling toward the door. She was going to the house of the champion Marquis to demand answers. Most of the estate's high-level experts had gone with Li Dan the night before and were now missing, leaving only a few low-level guards to follow her as she stormed out. Back at my estate, I finished breakfast with my mother and headed to the garden. Two maids stood nearby, holding bowls of fish food. I was calmly tossing handfuls of grain into the pond when Butler Li hurried over. He told me that Lady Yang was at the gates, demanding to see me. My Jinui guards were currently blocking her path. I didn't rush. I continued feeding the fish for another 10 minutes, watching the ripples on the water. Finally, I dusted off my hands. It was time to meet the wife of the Marquis of Jinshi. As I walked toward the entrance with Butler Li, the Jinui stood tall and saluted me. Lady Yang looked elegant and wealthy, but her eyes were frantic. The moment she saw me, I could tell she knew something was wrong. She demanded to know where her son was. I gave her a playful, mocking smile. I asked why she was looking for her son at my house. She snapped, telling me to stop playing dumb. I just spread my hands and told her he wasn't here. When she kept pushing, I told her it was funny she expected me to keep track of him. After all, he wasn't my son. She shook with rage. She threatened me, saying that if anything happened to Li Dan, the Marquis would make me pay with my life. I just smiled back and told her I'd be merciful and let their whole family reunite soon. She glared at me one last time and left. As soon as she got home, she started writing letters. Her husband was stationed far away on the border, but her second son, Li Feng, was studying at the Xiantian sword sect. He would get the news much faster. After sending the messengers, she sat alone, her eyes red with unshed tears. The news reached the palace quickly. Emperor Jing sat in his chambers as the old eunuch, Lian Ying, reported the disappearance. The emperor ordered him to find out for sure if I had killed Li Dan. Meanwhile, over at the house of the Marquis of Jinan, Du Changchun and his sons were also plotting. They sent people out to dig for the truth. Back in my private quarters, my mother, by phone, cornered me. She asked me straight out if I did it. I didn't lie to her. I told her I killed him last night. She went pale, worrying that the Marquis of Jinshi would destroy us. I told her not to worry, that I had a plan. She sighed, saying she would find a way to smuggle me out of the city if things got too dangerous. I grabbed her shoulders and told her I wasn't that useless playboy anymore. I told her I would protect her in this house. After calming her down, I went to my courtyard and drew the Suwang sword. I began practicing the 10,000 swords return to ancestor technique. My movements were fluid and sharp. The two young maids watching me were blushing, their hearts racing. I probably looked like a character out of a painting, white robes fluttering, sword humming through the air. When I finished, I noticed them staring. I asked what was on their minds. One of them stammered, asking if I wanted a bath since I'd been working up a sweat. The autumn air was still a bit warm, so I agreed. They prepared the water, but I sent them away when it was time to get in. I still wasn't used to people scrubbing my back. I stripped down and stepped into the warm water, closing my eyes to relax. Suddenly, the door swung open. Chen Wei, the fat heir of the Count of Qingyun, came barging in. He saw me in the tub and started winking, asking if I was cleaning up for the candlelight talk tonight. I had no idea what he was talking about. He explained that in Shiyu, the top courtesan of the Hongyan house, was making a rare appearance to choose her first inner circle guest. She was ranked second among the 4 great beauties of the capital. I had to laugh. That ranking was actually created by the original Lin Yuan and Chen Wei back when they were just bored rich kids. I'd never even seen her face because she always wore a veil. The number 1 spot belonged to Xia Qingwu, the famous dancer, but in Shiyu was a close second. Chen Wei was convinced I was getting ready to win her over. Apparently, to get close to her, one had to solve 3 difficult puzzles she had set. If I could solve her puzzles, I could spend the night with her. That's what Chen Wei told me, his eyes gleaming with longing. Hearing him talk like that actually made me curious about this woman. I decided we should go see what the fuss was about. Chen Wei grinned, rubbing his hands together. That was exactly why he had come to find me. As night fell, a silver moon rose slowly in the sky. I dressed in silver-white silk robes and grabbed a folding fan. With a fat ball on one side and a dark-skinned bodyguard on the other, I headed straight for the Hongyan House, the largest entertainment establishment in the capital. The place was packed. Scholars with fans and warriors in robes were all swarming the entrance. They were all there for Shiyu. "Move it! Out of the way!" Chen Wei shouted, his arrogance on full display. "What are you looking at? Are you blind? Can't you see the young Marquis and I have arrived?" He played the part of the spoiled noble perfectly. The people he cursed at looked furious, but they saw me standing there and quickly cleared a path. I sighed. "Fatty, stop screaming. We're supposed to be gentlemen, not thugs." "Right, brother," he chirped, though he didn't slow down. We marched inside with swagger. Oh, if it isn't the young Marquis. The madam of the house scurried over, posing and fluttering her fans. She was a middle-aged woman trying too hard to look young. I felt a wave of disgust, but suppressed it, tossing her a gold ingot. "My, you're so generous," she squealed. "If I were 20 years younger, I'd marry you myself." "Save the talk," I snapped. "Get us a good spot." She laughed and led us to a private booth on the 2nd floor. She promised to send girls over and hurried off. A moment later, 3 average-looking women entered, bringing a scent of cheap perfume. I gestured for them to stay with Chen Wei. To be honest, they weren't even as pretty as my 2 maids back home. Chen Wei didn't care. He was thrilled to have 3 beauties to himself, laughing as he started flirting and getting handsy. I sat back, sipping some plain rice wine. It tasted weak. I made a mental note to recreate the daughter's red wine recipe I knew from my past life if I ever got the chance. Below us, the main hall was overflowing. People were shouting for Shiyu to appear. The madam stood on the stage, beaming at the massive crowd. Business was good. After about 15 minutes, a figure appeared on the 3rd-floor staircase. She wore a light pink dress and a silk veil over her face. Her movements were elegant as she descended. The crowd went wild. "She's here. She's so beautiful." Chun Wei pushed his girls aside and leaned over the railing. Everyone went silent. The atmosphere shifted instantly. "Thank you all for coming," and Shiyu said, her voice soft and seductive. It was the kind of voice that made a man's imagination run wild. She gave a graceful bow. "I believe you all know the rules. Answer my 3 questions, and you will be my guest for the night." Suddenly, a notification rang in my head. Ding. Host is being charmed. Clearing effect. The system's voice snapped me back to reality. I looked at Chun Wei. His eyes were glazed and filled with heat. I felt a chill. If not for the system, I would have been entranced too. I narrowed my eyes at the woman on stage. I couldn't figure out how she was doing it. And Shiyu seemed used to the hungry stares. "The first task is simple," she announced. "Compose a poem about the autumn rain." Scholars and warriors immediately began shouting out verses. One by one, they recited their best work, but Shiyu just shook her head, her eyes showing a hint of disappointment. I found the whole thing a bit cliché. I'd seen this exact scenario in 100 web novels back on Earth. I almost wanted to leave and go to sleep, but I needed to know why she was trying to charm the crowd. Just as she was about to give up, a voice came from another booth on the 2nd floor. It was Du Zeding. His poem was better than the others, but I could tell by Shiyu's expression that it still wasn't enough. "Since no one can produce a poem that satisfies me," she said, turning to leave, "there is no need for the other questions." "Wait," I called out from my booth. My voice echoed through the hall as I recited. "You ask when I return, but no date is set. The autumn rain on Mount Boss swells the pools tonight. When shall we sit by the west window together and talk of how the rain fell on that distant mountain?" The silence that followed was deafening. Then, the room erupted. "Impossible. That can't be." When they realized the poem came from my booth, the reaction was instant disbelief. Du Zeding's voice rang out from next door, dripping with mockery. "Lin Yuan, you're trying to show off? You're an illiterate thug. Do you even know what a poem is?" And Shiyu looked stunned. She knew my reputation well. The old Lin Yuan had tried to force himself on her multiple times in the past. She clearly didn't believe I wrote it either. "Whether I can write poetry is none of your business," I shouted back. "If your stomach hurts, go to the latrine. Don't spray your filth here." The crowd burst into laughter. Du Zeding was shaking with rage. "Miss Shiyu, Lin Yuan is clearly cheating. You must reconsider." And Shiyu looked conflicted. Whether I had cheated or not, the poem was undeniably brilliant. The words came from my mouth, and since Shiyu hadn't specified that the poem had to be original, she had no choice. After a moment of hesitation, she announced that I had won the first round. The crowd grumbled, but they weren't stupid. They knew my reputation for being a ruthless thug, so most of them chose to shut their mouths. "The second challenge is a riddle in the form of a couplet," and Shiyu said, her voice steady. "Here is the first half. The more round, the more missing, the more missing, the more round. Year after year, day after night. Only at the end of the dark night do you see the sun." The room fell silent as the so-called scholars scratched their heads, faces twisted in concentration. Long minutes passed. Even Du Zeding, who usually loved the sound of his own voice, stayed quiet, and Shiyu's eyes drifted toward my booth. I couldn't tell if she was hopeful or just curious, but before she could declare the round a wash, I spoke up again. "Flowers bloom, flowers fall, flowers fall, flowers bloom," I recited. "Summer to autumn, heat to cold. Only after the long winter do you meet the spring." The silence shattered. It was like a lightning bolt had hit the room. People looked at me as if they were seeing a ghost. The metaphors matched perfectly, the moon's phases against the season cycles. Even the scholars who hated me couldn't hide their admiration. "Brilliant. It's absolutely seamless," someone whispered. Du Zeding looked like he was about to have a stroke. The veins in his neck were bulging, and his face was contorted with rage. He had come here tonight to claim Shiyu, and I was systematically dismantling his plans. "The second round goes to the young Marquis," and Shiyu announced. She waited a moment to see if anyone else would challenge it, but the room stayed silent. "Now, the third and final question. What medicine can cure the bitterness of lovesickness?" I felt a strange sense of déjà vu. This felt exactly like a plot from a web novel I'd read in my past life. I didn't even have to think. 2 ounces of 9-leaf Paris polyphylla," I said, my voice echoing. 1 mace of cicada pupae gathered on the winter solstice. Mix it with snow from the previous year. That is the only cure for the extreme bitterness of lovesickness. And Shiyu's expression turned mournful. She repeated my words in a soft murmur. But the Paris polyphylla only has 7 leaves. There are no cicada pupae on the winter solstice. And how can snow last until the next year? So, lovesickness has no cure. I see. She gave a tragic, hollow laugh. She looked defeated, yet strangely relieved. Young Marquis, I will be waiting for you on the 3rd floor. She turned and left without another word. The men in the hall looked at my booth with pure envy, while Du Ziting slammed his fist onto his table, shattering the wood. Lin Yuan, he hissed under his breath. Enjoy it while you can. This might be your last night of fun. Inside the booth, Chun Wei was staring at me, his jaw on the floor. Brother Yuan, you're incredible. Truly. Stay humble, I told him, standing up. Do you know why I never showed my talent before? Why, he asked. Because the tallest tree is the first to be caught by the wind, I said, sounding more profound than I felt. I headed toward the stairs. Chun Wei stayed behind, nodding to himself like he'd just heard a divine truth. The 3rd floor was a different world, quiet, elegant, and smelling of expensive incense. A maid led me to a private room and bowed. The young miss is inside. You may enter, sir. I pushed the door open and stepped in, leaving my guards outside. The room was decorated with ancient grace, and Shiyu sat at a tea table, her face still hidden behind a veil. Please sit, she said, pouring a cup. I sat across from her and took a sip. The tea is good, but since I'm your guest of honor, why the veil? She let out a soft, melodic laugh. I am not trying to fool you, Marquis. I have my reasons. My face can only be seen by my future husband. Oh, never mind then, I said. My interest evaporated instantly. I wasn't here for a wedding. One last thing. Why do you use charm techniques? She froze for a second, then looked at me with those fox-like eyes. Everyone says the young Marquis is a useless waste, but it seems you've fooled the world. A waste wouldn't have sensed my charm. To be honest, it's my natural constitution. I release it involuntarily. It's not something I do by choice. I didn't want to get caught in her gaze. I knew how dangerous that natural charm could be. Right. Well, I'm done here. I'm leaving. I stood up and walked toward the door. And Shiyu looked stunned. Men would normally wait in line from one end of the capital to the other just for a minute of her time, and I was walking out after 5 minutes. She watched my back disappear, a small smile playing on her lips. What an interesting man, she whispered to herself. To stay so rational under my influence, he's rare. When I got back downstairs, the crowd was staring at me with very strange expressions. Brother Yuan, Chun Wei whispered, looking concerned. That was really fast. Are you okay? Shut up, I snapped. Let's go back to the estate. This place is boring. Chun Wei gave me a knowing look, clearly thinking I had some kind of performance issue. I kicked him in the backside, but he just grinned, covering his rear as we walked out. By the next morning, the stories had already spread. Half the city was talking about my poetry, but the other half was laughing about how I only lasted half an incense stick's time in Shiyu's room. They called me the quickest gun in the capital. I didn't care. I had more important things to do. System, I whispered. Sign in. Ding. Sign in successful. Congratulations, host. You have received 30,000 great snow dragon riders. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. 30,000. These were legendary heavy cavalry. Does the host wish to summon them now? No, I shouted internally. 30,000 elite troops would never fit in the Marquis' estate. If they appeared out of thin air in the middle of the capital, the Emperor would have my head before lunch. I opened the status panel. Every single one of these riders was a cultivator, ranging from the 1st to the 9th level of chi refining. I finally had a real army. Now, the game was truly beginning. I struggled to keep my excitement in check. 30,000 chi refining stage soldiers was a terrifying force. To put that in perspective, my father's Northern Suppression Army was the strongest in the Great Jing Dynasty. Out of his 200,000 men, only 20,000 were body refiners. The rest were just ordinary mortals. I had just surpassed my father's elite force in a single breath. While I was reveling in my new power, the Minister of Revenue's estate was in an uproar. Xia Yunsheng, my future father-in-law, slammed his hand on the table, his face red with fury. He had just returned from the morning court session. What happened? Why are you so angry? His wife, Hua Yueyuan, asked in confusion. It's that damn brat, Lin Yuan. Xia Yinsheng barked. He went to the Red Beauty Pavilion again last night. He spent the night alone in a room with their top courtesan. Hua Yueyuan sighed. She had hoped the tragedy involving my father would change me, but in her eyes, a dog couldn't stop eating filth. She didn't know how to defend me anymore, so she just sat there in silence while her husband vented his frustration. Outside the room, Xia Qingwu had been coming to speak with her mother. She heard every word. Her chest heaved as she struggled to keep her composure. She had agreed to this marriage to honor the pact between our fathers, but that didn't mean she would tolerate me dragging her pride through the mud with some street performer. She turned and walked back to her courtyard, her expression like ice. She grabbed her sword and began practicing, her movements sharp and violent. Her junior sister, Ming'er, watched from a distance. She could feel the murderous intent in the air and decided it was safer to stay away. Back at the Marquis' estate, I finished breakfast with my mother and took a stroll through the grounds. The servants were frantic, cleaning every corner and hanging red decorations. The wedding was only 2 days away. The closer it got, the more depressed I felt. Even the joy of getting 30,000 legendary riders couldn't fix my mood. As a man from the modern world, the idea of marrying someone I didn't know or love was suffocating. But I couldn't refuse. I didn't want my mother to worry about me anymore. Fine, I sighed to myself. As long as she's happy. Suddenly, a shadow flickered. Black Wuchang appeared beside me. Young master, Li Feng, the second son of Marquis Jinshi, will enter the city in 15 minutes. My soul-breaking haul was growing. Information was flowing in faster than ever. Ever since I killed Li Dan, I had Black Wuchang watching the Jinshi estate like a hawk. Every secret letter sent by the Li family's matriarch had passed through my hands before reaching its destination. I had allowed the news to leak out of the city on purpose. He's back already? I said calmly. Good. If he's looking for death, I'll send him to reunite with his brother. On the outskirts of the capital, Li Feng was a storm of rage. When he received his mother's letter, he had smashed his desk to splinters. He had immediately asked his master for permission to leave and raced back to the city. He marched through the streets, his killing intent so thick that the commoners scrambled to get out of his way. Isn't that the second son of Marquis Jinshi? Someone whispered. Why does he look like he's about to kill someone? You haven't heard? The young Marquis Lin killed his older brother. He's here for blood. Li Feng didn't even stop at his own home. He went straight for the champion Marquis' estate. He wanted revenge. He wanted to restore his family's prestige. Everyone had forgotten the power of the Jinshi house, while his father was away guarding the border. Today, he would use my life to remind them. He stopped in front of my gates and stared at the plaque bearing my family's name. With a roar, he drew his sword and slashed. The heavy wooden plaque snapped in two, crashing to the dirt. The crowd that had followed him gasped. Nobody expected him to be this bold. Who dares cause trouble at the Marquis' estate? Dian Wei sensed the attack and appeared at the gate instantly. He loomed over Li Feng like a mountain of muscle. Li Feng flinched for a second, but then he remembered he was a grandmaster now. He regained his confidence. Tell Lin Yuan to come out and die. Li Feng shouted. Presumptuous. Dian Wei's killing intent flared. He was about to crush the brat's skull when I stepped out. Wait, I said. I looked at the broken plaque on the ground. Li Feng, does your father know you're this arrogant? Cut the crap, Lin Yuan. I'm here to avenge my brother. He pointed his sword directly at my throat. I chuckled. Why would I kill your brother? Does anyone have proof? Because my brother went to assassinate you that night. Li Feng screamed, no longer caring about the scandal. And you killed him. I turned to the crowd and raised my voice. Did you all hear that? His brother came to assassinate me. Am I not allowed to fight back? If Li Dan was too weak to finish the job and got himself killed, is that my fault? The onlookers began to mutter. He's right. Li Dan deserved it. Li Feng's face turned purple. He realized I was playing him. Blood for blood. Lin Yuan died. He lunged, his sword a blur of steel aimed at my heart. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Li Feng sneered, thinking I was paralyzed with fear. In your next life, keep your eyes open, he hissed. But when the tip of his blade was an inch from my chest, it stopped. It didn't matter how hard he pushed, the sword wouldn't budge. He looked down and saw Dian Wei holding the blade between two fingers. Before Li Feng could react, Dian Wei's fist connected with his chest. The sound of ribs snapping was loud and clear. Li Feng sprayed a fountain of blood and flew 5 meters through the air, hitting the ground like a sack of stones. Great, great Grandmaster. Li Feng gasped, coughing up more blood. He tried to crawl away, but his body wouldn't obey. Lin Yuan, you can't kill me, he screamed, his voice trembling with terror. I'm a disciple of the Xiantian sword sect. If you touch me, my master will never let you live. Li Feng was desperate. He started shouting about the Xiantian sword sect and his powerful master, hoping the threat would force me to back down. He actually thought those names would scare me. He was wrong. I didn't feel a flicker of fear. Die, I muttered. Dian Wei didn't wait for a command. He swung his fist again. The impact was sickening. His fist punched straight through Li Feng's chest, leaving a gaping hole. The crowd gasped, some of them looking like they were about to faint from the sheer brutality of it. Dian Wei, could you be a little more elegant next time? I looked at Li Feng's ruined chest and sighed. Yes, young master. I'll keep that in mind, Dian Wei replied. He gave me a simple, honest smile that made it hard to believe he had just committed such a violent act. Take the body and deliver it to the Marquis of Jinxi's estate, I told the Jinui guards. I didn't stay to watch the cleanup. I turned around and walked back into my home. As soon as I left, several figures in the crowd vanished, hurrying off to report what they had seen. Back at the palace, Emperor Jing sat in stunned silence for a moment when the news reached him. He hadn't expected me to be so reckless. Killing Li Feng meant I had officially declared war on the Marquis of Jinxi, Li Yuan. This is perfect, the emperor whispered, almost to himself, as Lianing stood nearby. Lin Yuan has killed both of Li Yuan's sons. Li Yuan will never let this go. And then there's Li Feng's master to deal with. We'll let them tear each other apart. He looked at the eunuch. Keep a close eye on the movements in Shijiang. As you command, Lianing replied before slipping away. When word spread that I had killed Li Feng in broad daylight, the city's power players were divided. Some were thrilled. The Marquis of Jinan and Sun Xiong couldn't hide their joy. All they had to do now was sit back and watch the fireworks. On the other hand, Xia Yinsheng was furious. He paced his study, calling me a brainless brute. If his wife, Hua Yueyun, hadn't stopped him, he would have marched over to break the engagement right then and there. He didn't want his daughter tied to a dead man. When Xia Qingwu heard the news, her cold eyes flickered with a strange emotion. Her sister, Ming'er, was much louder about it. Wow, brother-in-law is so brave. He just kills whoever he wants, she cheered, full of praise. At the Red Beauty Pavilion, and Shiyu heard the report and felt a certain decision in her heart grow even stronger. When Li Feng's body was finally carried into the Marquis of Jinxi's estate, his mother, Lady Yang, collapsed on the spot. By the time she woke up, it was already dark. Quick, get me ink and paper, she hissed, her face pale and her body trembling. I need to write to the Marquis and to Fenger's master. The servants scrambled to obey, terrified that her rage would turn on them. Back at my estate, my mother, by phone, was pacing. Son, you were too impulsive, she said, pointing a finger at me. Mother, don't worry. I can handle it, I assured her. I sat with her through dinner, but she was too worried to eat more than a few bites. I, however, had a great appetite and ate until I was full. I spent the evening in my courtyard, sipping tea and relaxing. I didn't even bother practicing my cultivation. My hidden cards were stacking up, and for the first time since arriving in this dangerous world, I felt like I finally had a solid foothold. I felt at peace. The next morning, before the sun had even fully risen, 2 young maidservants woke me from a deep sleep. What is it? It's still dark out, I grumbled, half asleep. Young Marquis, today is your wedding day? We have to get you dressed so you can go pick up your bride, one of them chirped. That cleared the fog from my brain. I got out of bed, feeling a bit reluctant but knowing there was no escape. System, sign in, I commanded in my head. Ding. Sign in successful. Congratulations, host, you have obtained the heaven grade movement technique. So close, yet so far. As the maids fussed over my clothes, I checked the new skill. I was thrilled. I had been lacking a movement technique to improve my mobility, and this one was perfect. System, cultivate so close, yet so far, I thought. A flood of information rushed into my mind. Within moments, I had mastered it. According to the description, at full mastery, I could cross 1,000 miles in a single step. Young Marquis, we're finished, the maid said, pulling me back to reality. I looked in the mirror. I was dressed in a vibrant red wedding robe, and I had to admit, I looked sharp. Who is this guy? I thought, admiring my own reflection. Damn, I'm handsome. I went to my mother's courtyard for one last lecture and a few blessings, and then the wedding procession set off. I rode a tall, powerful horse at the front of the line, looking every bit the noble groom. Behind me, servants carried a lavishly decorated bridal sedan. Congratulations, young Marquis. People shouted from the streets. You look wonderful today. I felt great. Every time someone complimented my looks, I tossed them a silver tael. The crowd went wild, shouting blessings and praise as fast as they could speak. I didn't mind. I was feeling generous. An hour later, we arrived at the Xia estate. I entered the main hall and bowed to my future in-laws. Greetings, father-in-law, mother-in-law. Xia Yinsheng gave a reluctant grunt. Lin Yuan, Hua Yueyin said, her voice heavy with meaning. From today on, you and Qingwu are husband and wife. You aren't a child anymore. Think of your family before you act. I understand, I replied. I knew she was talking about Li Feng. It's getting late, Xia Yinsheng said, waving a hand. Go get her. I walked towards Xia Qingwu's courtyard. I knew the way well. I played here all the time as a kid. Sister, he's here. Meng'er called out when she saw me. Xia Qingwu didn't say anything. Supported by her maids, she stepped out of her room. She wore a stunning phoenix crown and a red silk robe. With the makeup and her naturally cold demeanor, she looked like a peerless, icy queen. Let's go, I said. I didn't really know what else to say. We walked to the front gates where a massive crowd had gathered. They gasped when they saw her. Miss Xia is like a goddess, they whispered. The young Marquis is a lucky man. With the help of the maids, Xia Qingwu stepped into the sedan. Move out, I shouted. The procession began its grand march back toward the house of the champion Marquis. From a window in the Red Beauty Pavilion, and Shiyu watched us pass, her gaze lingering on the crowd as if lost in thought. In a private room in a nearby tavern, Crown Prince Jing Tianhong watched the procession with white knuckles. He had always wanted Xia Qingwu for himself, but as long as my father, Lin Zhantian, had been alive, he had never dared to make a move. I watched the wedding procession through the window, but I wasn't the only one watching. High up in a private room of a nearby tavern, Crown Prince Jing Tianhong gripped his railing so hard his knuckles turned white. He had wanted Xia Qingwu for years. He'd never dared to move while my father was alive, so he'd resorted to shadows and poison. He was the one who had orchestrated my predecessor's death. He had ordered his men to finish off the original Lin Yuan, not knowing that a soul from another world would take over the body. Now, he had to watch the woman he desired marry the man he tried to kill. I could practically feel his hatred radiating from the tavern. He was likely swearing to himself that once he took the throne, he would make me suffer a fate worse than death. But for now, he had to swallow his rage. He was the prince, and appearances mattered. A short while later, the procession stopped at the gates of the Marquis estate. Xia Qingwu and I stepped through the doors together. The ceremony was stripped down and simple. There were no grand invitations, no massive banquets, and no rows of cheering guests. My father had passed away recently, and out of respect, we kept everything quiet. We reached the main hall where my mother, by phone, sat in the high seat. She was beaming. Under the guidance of Butler Lee, we performed the traditional bows. One to heaven and earth. One to my mother. One to each other. Then came the tea ceremony. We offered tea to my mother and knelt to burn incense before my father's memorial tablet. With that final bow, the marriage was official. We were husband and wife in the eyes of the law and the gods. Qingwu, my mother said, taking her hand with a warm smile. Your family now. This is your home. I understand, mother, Xia Qingwu replied. Her voice was calm, almost detached. My mother told her to go rest, and that someone would call her for dinner. One of my maids led her toward my courtyard. Once she was gone, my mother turned to me, her expression turning stern. Son, Qingwu is your wife now. I don't care if you're happy about it or not, but you are never to hurt her. Do you understand? I know, mother, I said. I felt neither joy nor sorrow. It was just a fact. Also, she added, her eyes twinkling, hurry up and give me a big, healthy grandson. I stared at her, speechless. We had been married for 5 minutes, and she was already talking about kids. Mother, you can't rush these things, I said firmly, trying to shut that conversation down immediately. I wasn't ready to be a father. I know, she laughed. I'm just giving you a reminder. I made my excuses and escaped the hall before she could mention diapers. I headed to the side hall where my friend Chun Wei, better known as Fatty Chun, was waiting with a group of other young noblemen I used to party with. Brother Lin, congratulations, they shouted, cupping their hands in respect. What's there to congratulate? I grumbled, dropping into a chair. It's just a headache. Fatty Chun blinked. Brother, you just married the #1 beauty in the great Jing dynasty. What could you possibly be annoyed about? You don't understand a thing, I snapped, glaring at him. They didn't get it. To them, she was a prize. To me, she was a cold enigma and a political target. Still, they had come to show support, so I couldn't be a bad host. I ordered the servants to bring out a spread of food and wine. We drank and talked for hours until they were finally full and headed home. Once they left, I didn't go back to my room. I went to a pavilion in the garden and lay down on a reclining chair. I had only met Xia Qingwu a few times. We barely spoke, and going back to the room now would just be awkward, and I preferred my own company. The wine settled in, and I started to drift off under the cool evening air. Young Marquis, the madam is asking for you. It's time for dinner. A maid's soft voice woke me as the sky began to darken. I rubbed my forehead and headed to the dining hall. My mother and Xia Qingwu were already seated. You child, my mother complained as I walked in. Qingwu just arrived at the estate, and you didn't even stay to keep her company? I fell asleep in the pavilion by mistake, I said with a dry laugh. Dinner was lavish, despite there only being 3 of us. My mother kept piling food into Xia Qingwu's bowl. Here, eat more. Thank you, mother. I can manage, Xia Qingwu said. Her tone was icy, as usual. It honestly annoyed me. She acted like everyone in the world owed her money. The meal ended in a strange, heavy silence. Go on. Go rest, my mother said, dismissing us. It's your wedding night. I won't disturb you. We walked back to my courtyard in total silence. When we reached the door, I cleared my throat. You should sleep early. I'll be sleeping in the side room tonight. I didn't want to deal with her coldness all night, and I certainly didn't want to wake up frozen by her demeanor. Xia Qingwu didn't even answer. She just walked straight into my bedroom and closed the door. Fine. Keep acting high and mighty, I muttered to myself. Inside the room, Xia Qingwu was actually confused. Knowing my reputation as a playboy, she had expected me to jump at the chance to be with her. She wondered if I was playing some kind of psychological game to get her attention. But she didn't mind. She hadn't planned on letting me touch her anyway. The next morning, my maids woke me up early. Young Marquis, it's time to get up. You and the young mistress need to pay your respects to the madam. They looked confused seeing me come out of the side room, but they were smart enough not to ask questions. After I got dressed, I found Xia Qingwu already waiting in the courtyard. We visited my mother first, and then we headed over to the Xia estate for the traditional return visit. When it was time to leave the Xia house, her younger sister Meng'er decided to come back to the Marquis estate with us. Brother-in-law, is your house fun? Meng'er asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Not really, I said. Is there good food? Nope. Meng'er's face fell instantly. If there was no fun and no food, she clearly regretted coming. I suppressed a smile. This girl was much more entertaining than her sister. Meng'er, I said, leaning in. I can make you something delicious that you've never tasted before. Her eyes lit up. What is it? Don't be in such a rush, I said, teasing her. But you have to promise me one thing first. Anything. What? Stay at the estate for a while and talk to my mother when she's bored. Deal. I needed someone lively around the house. My mother was lonely, and Xia Qingwu was about as talkative as a brick wall. If she said 10 words in a day, it was a miracle. Meng'er, on the other hand, never stopped talking. Is that all? Meng'er asked. That's it. Deal, she chirped, completely unaware she had just been recruited as my mother's personal entertainer. Xiaqing Wu watched the whole exchange in silence. I could see the gears turning in her head. She was likely wondering what kind of scheme I was cooking up now. Meng'er was innocent and naive. It would be far too easy for someone like me to lead her astray. Xiaqing Wu's eyes narrowed as she looked at me. She probably thought I had some improper designs on her younger sister and was using snacks as bait. She didn't say a word, but I could tell she had made a silent vow to watch me like a hawk. We walked onto the bustling main street. The sights and sounds of the capital were everywhere. Suddenly, a vendor selling candied haws caught Meng'er's eye. She bolted toward the stall, her eyes sparkling like diamonds. "Sister, look! Candied haws!" she shouted. She turned to the vendor, excitement radiating off her. "I want 5 sticks." "Coming right up, little miss," the vendor chirped, reaching for the treats. Well, whose little girl is this? She's absolutely stunning." A raspy, grating voice came from behind us. It sounded like a choking duck, and Meng'er turned around, her expression instantly shifting to one of pure disgust. "Hey, brat, do you have any idea who I am?" The man's pride was clearly wounded by her look of revulsion. He stepped closer, glaring at her. "I don't care who you are," Meng'er snapped, grabbing her candied haws, and told him to get lost. The man's face flushed with anger. "You little brat, you really don't know the heights of the heavens. I am the son of the current prime minister. Speaking to you is an honor. Do you understand?" He puffed out his chest, looking incredibly smug. Meng'er didn't have time for someone who was clearly missing a few brain cells. She tried to walk away, but he stepped in her path, blocking her. "Did I say you could leave?" He tilted his head back, looking down his nose at her. "You should get out of the way," Meng'er threatened. "If my sister and brother-in-law get here, you're finished." The man burst out laughing. "A joke? That's a total joke. There isn't a single person in this city I'm afraid of." "Oh, is that so?" I stepped forward, Xiaqing Wu trailing just behind me. "Funny coincidence. I don't fear anyone in this city either." The man spun around, his jaw dropping. "Lin Yuan? What are you doing here?" "Yuan Jian," I said, recognizing him immediately. He was the prime minister's son. Back in the day, he and the original Lin Yuan never got along. They were always at each other's throats. "Do you have any idea who you were just harassing?" "Who?" Yuan Jian asked, his voice trembling slightly. "She is my wife's junior sister. My dear family, do you understand now?" Yuan Jian had suspected as much when I appeared, but hearing it confirmed made his face go pale. A crowd was already gathering to watch the drama. The street vendor had wisely packed up his cart and vanished into the shadows. Yuan Jian cursed his luck. Of all the girls to mess with, he had to pick one connected to me. "Since she's your wife's sister, I'll be the bigger man and let it slide," he muttered, looking for an exit. He knew I was a loose cannon. I had killed a disciple from the Xiantian sword sect without blinking. He wanted out. "No, don't be the bigger man," I said, gesturing toward Meng'er. "Go on. Keep bothering her. Continue." "Lin Yuan." "Look, let's be reasonable," Yuan Jian said, his voice rising in frustration. "We're both elites of this city. We see each other all the time. Is it really worth tearing each other's faces off?" "I'll give you reasonable," I growled. I stepped forward and delivered a massive slap right to the side of his head. The force sent him stumbling forward, his ears probably ringing. "I'll show you how reasonable I am," I shouted, raining down slaps on him one after another. The crowd stood there, mouths agape. This was the son of the prime minister, and I was beating him like a misbehaving child in broad daylight. Only I would dare to do something so brazen. Yuan Jian's eyes turned blood red with rage. He had the cultivation of the Xiantian realm. He could have easily tried to kill me, but his logic held him back. He knew if he fought back, he'd end up like Li Feng, dead. He had to swallow his pride and take the beating. After a few minutes, I stopped. Not because I was worried about killing him, but because my hand was starting to hurt. "Beat it," I spat. "If you ever bully my family again, a few slaps will be the least of your worries." Yuan Jian gave me one last hateful glare before lowering his head and scurrying away into the crowd. "Wow, brother-in-law, you were amazing." Meng'er cheered, looking at me like I was a superhero. "It was nothing, just standard procedure," I said, smoothing back my hair and trying to look cool. "Here," Meng'er said, holding out a stick of candied haws. A reward for saving me. I took it, though I secretly wondered if I could have asked for a better reward. She handed another stick to Xia Qingwu, and the three of us continued our walk back to the Marquis estate. Meanwhile, back at his own home, Yuan Jian was losing his mind. He smashed everything in his room, screaming my name. Lin Yuan, you useless trash. I'll kill you one day. His hands were shaking with fury. He had never been so humiliated in his life. The only thing that had stopped him from retaliating was the fear of my bodyguard, Dian Wei. He sat in the wreckage of his room, his mind already spinning with ways to get revenge. Across town, at the Zuaxian restaurant, the atmosphere was much calmer. In a private room on the second floor, Crown Prince Jing Tianhong sat with the Du brothers. Your Highness, getting rid of Lin Yuan is actually quite simple, Du Ziting said, leaning in. We just need to deal with Jian Wei first. Once he's gone, Lin Yuan is just a lamb for the slaughter. True, Jing Tianhong sighed, looking frustrated. But who is strong enough to take down Dian Wei? Du Ziting smirked. Has your Highness forgotten about Li Feng? He was murdered by Lin Yuan. Do you really think Li Feng's master is going to sit back and do nothing? Jing Tianhong's eyes lit up. Ever since I had stolen Xia Qingwu from him, he hadn't been thinking straight. He had forgotten that he and Li Feng were from the same sect. Li Feng's master was his own martial uncle. The Xiantian sword sect wouldn't let a disciple's murder go unpunished. They had likely already received the news and were sending someone to exact vengeance. My friend, you've woken me from a dream. Jing Tianhong laughed, clapping Du Ziting on the shoulder. It is my honor to serve you, Prince, Du Ziting said, his face full of flattery. Good. When I ascend the throne, you will be my right-hand man. The prince promised, throwing out empty rewards. Du Ziting beamed with excitement, while his younger brother, Du Zixian, looked on with hidden contempt. He hated his brother's sycophantic behavior. But as the three of them sat there plotting, none of them noticed the shadow outside the door. A guard whispered into Jing Tianhong's ear, his voice low and urgent. As soon as the man left, the crown prince burst into a loud, triumphant laugh. What's the good news, Your Highness? Du Ziting asked, looking confused. Great news, the prince sneered. Lin Yuan just beat up Yuan Jian, the prime minister's son, right in the middle of the street. Du Ziting smirked. Lin Yuan is getting more arrogant by the second. That's good for us. The more people he offends, the better. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Your Highness is truly wise, Du Ziting continued, piling on the flattery. I'll contact Yuan Jian immediately. We can work together to take Lin Yuan down. The two of them laughed, their voices echoing through the private room. They thought they were being clever. They had no idea that every word they spoke was being recorded. My soul-breaking hall was already watching them. The report was delivered to Black Wuchang and Shun Lian before the prince even finished his drink. Back at the manor, I decided it was time for introductions. Mother, this is Meng'er, I said, gesturing to the young girl standing beside us. She's Qingwu's junior sister. Xia Qingwu looked at me strangely when I used her name so casually, but since my mother was right there, she kept her mouth shut. My mother, by phone, smiled warmly at the girl. Lady Lin, I'll be staying at the estate for a while, Meng'er said, acting incredibly polite and sweet. I hope I won't be a bother. Not at all, my mother replied, her eyes brightening. If you're Qingwu's sister, you're family. There's no such thing as a bother among family. My mother had always wanted a daughter after she had me, but it never happened. Looking at the charming Meng'er, she was clearly thrilled. Thank you, Lady Lin, Meng'er chirped. If you're ever bored, I can come talk to you. Good, very good, my mother whispered. Qingwu was the silent type. Having her sit and chat was a lost cause. Meng'er's arrival was exactly what this quiet house needed. My mother turned to me and told me to handle the girls' living arrangements. Do you want your own place, or? I started to ask as we walked toward my courtyard. I'll just stay in your courtyard, brother-in-law. Meng'er interrupted, skipping ahead. I shrugged. My courtyard was massive with plenty of empty rooms. She could stay wherever she wanted. Once they were settled, I lay down under a large tree in the yard. I realized I hadn't used my daily sign-in yet. I closed my eyes and called out to the system in my mind. System, sign in. Asterisk ding. Sign in successful. Congratulations, host, you have received 1 crate of spicy sticks. Asterisk. I nearly jumped out of my skin. What? Spicy sticks? Are you kidding me, system? This was a world of high-level martial arts and deadly cultivators. Why was I getting junk food? Rewards are random, the cold, mechanical voice replied. Please maintain a calm mindset and accept your reality. I couldn't accept it. I was furious, but the system went silent, leaving me to suffer the loss in frustrated silence. Brother-in-law? What's wrong? Manga asked, skipping over to me. You look upset. It's nothing, I muttered, changing the subject. How's the room? Do you like it? It's okay, she said, tossing her head back. It'll do. So, when are you going to make me that delicious food you promised? In a bit, I said dismissively. I looked at her, feeling curious. Manga, what's the name of your sect? She puffed out her chest with pride. My sect is famous. Have you heard of the 3 great sects of the Great Jing Dynasty? I belong to one of them. Oh, that impressive. Of course. My Piao Miao Immortal sect might not be as strong as the Xiantian Sword sect, but we're just as good as the Luoyun sect. Who's the strongest person in your sect? I asked. Our Grandmaster, obviously, she said, her eyes full of worship. I heard his cultivation has already surpassed the Grandmaster level and reached the Void Refinement stage. I felt a chill run down my spine. The Void Refinement stage. I hadn't expected the Great Jing Dynasty to house monsters of that caliber. If one sect had a Void Refinement Elder, the others definitely did too. I wasn't strong enough. Not yet. I had my Jinyui and my hidden experts, but I couldn't match that kind of top-tier power yet. And what about your senior sister? I asked, glancing toward Qingwu. Sister is one of our most talented disciples, Manga said. She's already a grade 6 Grandmaster. I was stunned. That ice block was only a year older than me, and she was already a grade 6 Grandmaster? I had been given 60 years of cultivation by the system, and I was only at grade 1. What about you? I asked. I'm only at grade 1, she said, looking a bit embarrassed. I'm way behind her. I went silent. These two were freaks. Absolute monsters. Manga saw my expression and thought I was feeling bad because I couldn't cultivate. She patted my shoulder like an old woman comforting a child. Don't be depressed, brother-in-law. My sister is amazing, but she's still married to you. With her protecting you, nobody will dare bully you. I played along, keeping a straight face. Then I'll leave my safety in your hands, Manga. No problem. Sister and I will protect you together, she promised, thumping her chest. Manga, time to practice your sword. The cold voice came from behind us, making Manga flinch. She stuck her tongue out at me and ran off to grab her blade. Qingwu gave me a long, warning look. Her eyes said it all. If I had any bad intentions toward her sister, she'd end me. I ignored her. I was a man with a system. I didn't take threats. I leaned back and watched them. The two of them moved through the courtyard like ghosts, their movements elegant and deadly. The sound of steel whistling through the air was constant. Fallen leaves were sliced clean in half before they could touch the ground. Watching the sharp flash of their blades, I felt a sudden, restless itch in my own hands. I watched the two of them practice for a while longer, feeling a strange urge to join in, but I knew my limits. I wasn't ready for a real spar yet. Instead, I stood up and headed toward the Marquis's estate kitchens. Young Marquis, are you hungry? The head cook asked, rushing over the moment he saw me step inside. No, I replied, rolling up my sleeves. I'm here to cook a dish. The cook looked like he was about to have a heart attack. No, you mustn't. Young Marquis, you are of noble status. How could you possibly step into a kitchen? It's fine, I said, waving off his concerns. Just watch and learn. Once you've got it down, you'll be the one making it. He didn't dare argue further. My reputation for having a short fuse preceded me. Even if I seemed different lately, he wasn't willing to bet his skin on me not reverting to my old, volatile self. I scanned the ingredients. I had decided on braised pork belly. Luckily, the seasonings in Tianwu continent were surprisingly similar to what I remembered from the modern world. I started by blanching the pork with ginger and green onions. Once it was parboiled, I sliced it into thick, uniform cubes. I heated the oil, seared the meat until it was golden brown, and then set it aside to melt the rock sugar into a deep amber glaze. I added boiling water, tossed the meat back in, added the spices, and let it simmer on a low heat. The cook stood there, mouth agape. He couldn't wrap his head around how a pampered noble like me knew his way around a stove. "Did you catch all that?" I asked, wiping my hands. No, sir," he admitted, looking embarrassed. "It's fine. I'll write the recipe down for you. Just follow it a couple of times, and you'll get it." "Thank you, young Marquis." He bowed low, clearly relieved. "Finish up the other dishes," I told him. "I'm done here. I only did this to keep my promise to Manga. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bothered." As the pork finished simmering, I plated it, the rich aroma filling the room. Just as I was about to leave, I remembered the spicy Yahello snacks I'd pulled from the system earlier. Girls usually love this stuff. I secretly pulled out a few packs, dumped them onto a small plate, and tossed the plastic packaging into the furnace. I couldn't risk anyone seeing materials that didn't belong to this world. Outside, the sun was setting. The golden light hit Xia Qingwu's face as she watered the flowers in the courtyard, making her look incredibly elegant. "Madam, the young Marquis has called for you and Miss Manga to have dinner," a maid whispered behind her. "I understand," Xia Qingwu replied. She finished watering the plants and led Manga to the dining hall. I was already waiting at the table. The scent of the braised pork was so intense that the serving maids were practically drooling. I couldn't help but chuckle. "I've already taught the cook how to make this. If you want to try it, ask him later." The maids quickly looked down, blushing and staying silent. "Brother-in-law, did you make something delicious?" Manga shouted as she burst through the door. "I promised, didn't I?" I smiled. "It smells amazing." Her eyes were glued to the pork. My mother, by phone, walked in next. "What smells so good?" We all sat down, and Manga didn't wait a second. She grabbed a large piece of pork and stuffed it into her mouth. Her expression shifted into one of pure bliss. "It's so good. This is incredible." My mother and Xia Qingwu tried a piece each, their eyes widening in surprise. "Son, when did you learn to cook?" my mother asked, suspicious. "Oh, I just researched it when I was bored. It's not that hard," I lied. She didn't seem entirely convinced, but she was happy to see me doing something productive. "Wait, what's this?" Manga pointed to the plate of bright red Yahello. "It's called Yahello. Give it a try." The three of them each took a piece. The moment they bit down, the explosion of spice and savory oil hit them. It was a flavor profile they had never experienced. "So spicy," Manga cried out, sticking her tongue out and fanning her mouth with her hand. Xia Qingwu wasn't faring much better. Her face turned a deep shade of crimson. "Mother, have some water," I said, pouring a cup for by phone. She downed it quickly, gasping for air. "Why is this so hot?" she asked. Yet, despite the heat, they couldn't stop reaching for more. I watched them amused. It seemed the universal law held true. Women can't resist spicy snacks. After dinner, we walked back toward the living quarters. Manga was still buzzing. "Brother-in-law, that was the best thing I've ever eaten. Can you make it again?" "As long as you like it, I'll make it whenever you want," I promised. "Really?" Her eyes sparkled, and even Xia Qingwu looked interested. "Of course. When have I ever lied to you?" When we reached the courtyard, I started heading toward the side guest room. Manga stopped me, looking confused. "Brother-in-law, where are you going? Isn't your room with my sister?" I froze. I need to go find something." Manga didn't think much of it, but Xia Qingwu's face turned bright red. She gave Manga a sharp glare and hurried into her room, leaving the girl standing there wondering what she'd done wrong. Late that night, I sat on the roof of the estate, listening to the crickets. A shadow flickered, and Black Wuchang appeared beside me. "My lord, I've looked into it," he whispered. "The night Du Ziting invited you out for drinks, the wine was definitely poisoned. There were other young nobles present. We interrogated one of them. And?" I asked. I wasn't surprised that Du Ziting was involved, but I suspected he wasn't the mastermind. The man we questioned broke. He said that on the night of the poisoning, Du Ziting let something slip. "The one who wants you dead is Crown Prince Jing Tianhong." Jing Tianhong. My brow furrowed. We had our disagreements, sure, but I didn't think we were at the assassination stage yet. There had to be a deeper reason why the future emperor wanted the house of the champion marquis erased. I muttered the name to myself, trying to make sense of it. I searched my memories, but I couldn't find a single reason why Jing Tianhong would want me dead. In my past life as the original Lin Yuan, I barely had any interaction with the Crown Prince at all. My lord, there is one more thing, Black Wuchang added. Today, after you beat up Yuan Jian on the street, Jing Tianhong met with the Du brothers at the Zuixian restaurant. They were plotting how to get rid of you. In the end, Du Ziding suggested a plan to let Li Feng's master handle the dirty work. They want to sit back and watch the tigers fight so they can reap the rewards. I let out a cold laugh. They certainly know how to calculate. I'm afraid I'm going to have to disappoint them. I looked into the darkness, my eyes turning sharp. Keep an eye on Jing Tianhong. Since he's so eager to kill me, let's send him to hell first. Understood, my lord. Black Wuchang vanished into the night as silently as a ghost. I stayed on the roof, thinking, was Jing Tianhong acting on his own, or was this an order from Emperor Jing? The next morning, I woke up feeling the pressure. After learning that the great Jing dynasty had hidden old monsters at the void returning stage, I was desperate for more power. I didn't waste a second. System, sign in, I commanded. A crisp chime rang in my head. Ding. Sign in successful. Congratulations, host. You have received one small spirit pill. The system explained that this was a rare pill used by grandmasters to boost their cultivation without any side effects. I took the pill out, and the rich, medicinal fragrance immediately filled my lungs. Just smelling it made my whole body feel refreshed. I swallowed it without hesitation. The medicinal power surged through me, immediately being refined by my emperor's secret art. I could feel my cultivation rising steadily. After a few breaths, the energy settled. I had reached the second level of the Grandmaster realm. Not bad. Moving up a full level that quickly was a win in my book. I spent a few minutes stabilizing my new strength before opening my door, feeling like I could take on the world. Nothing beats the feeling of getting stronger without having to grind for years. Hey, brother-in-law, why did you sleep in the guest room? I looked up to see Mengder standing at the courtyard gate, looking at me with pure curiosity. I cleared my throat, feeling a bit awkward. Grown-up business. Don't ask questions, kid. She puffed out her cheeks. I'm not a kid. Meanwhile, on the official road dozens of miles outside the capital, a middle-aged man in a gray robe was walking toward the city. He had a long sword strapped to his back and a cold, unapproachable aura. He didn't smile. He looked like the kind of man you didn't want to cross. An hour later, the massive gates of the capital appeared in his sight. I've been away for over 10 years, he whispered, staring at the walls. I wonder how you're doing now. He shook off the nostalgia and entered the city, heading straight for the inner districts. Before he could get far, a servant blocked his path and bowed deeply. Sir, the Crown Prince requests your presence. The man frowned slightly, but followed the servant to a nearby tavern. Inside a private room, Jing Tianhong stood up and bowed respectfully. Uncle, please forgive me for not greeting you at the city gates personally. The man remained stoic. It doesn't matter. Why did you call for me? You've come for Li Feng's matter, haven't you? The man didn't speak. He just gave a sharp, cold nod. My heart aches for junior brother Li Feng, Jing Tianhong said, his voice full of fake sorrow. I wanted to avenge him myself, but Lin Yuan is protected by a powerful grandmaster. I was powerless. My father, the emperor, also looks the other way because he remembers the late Marquis's service to the country. The middle-aged man looked bored, his patience wearing thin. Jing Tianhong caught the hint and moved quickly to the point. When you go to the Marquis estate, please be careful of that grandmaster. My investigation shows he is ruthless and very mysterious. I heard you, the man said, turning to leave. If there's nothing else, I'll be going. As soon as he left, Du Ziding stepped out from the shadows, looking worried. Your Highness, do you think your uncle is a match for Dian Wei? It's hard to say, Jing Tianhong admitted. My uncle is at the 8th level of the Grandmaster realm. But we still don't know Dian Wei's exact cultivation level. 8th level. Du Ziding gasped. That was the same level as his own father, the Marquis of Jinan. Back at my estate, the man in the gray robe stood before my closed gates. He stood there in silence for a long time, lost in thought. Finally, he gathered his internal energy and let out a shout that echoed through the entire street. Han Jian of the Heavenly Mysterious Sword Sect has come to the Champion Marquis estate to seek instruction. Inside, I heard the voice and smirked. You finally showed up. I walked toward the gate with my hands behind my back, Dianwei following closely behind me. In the garden, Bai Feng, Meng'er, and Xia Qingwu also heard the shout. The moment Bai Feng heard the name, Han Jian, she froze. Her face went pale as memories from over a decade ago came rushing back. Xia Qingwu noticed her reaction, her brow furrowing in confusion. I stepped outside and came face to face with the cold, middle-aged man. How exactly do you want to seek instruction? I asked plainly. When Han Jian saw me, his calm expression flickered for a second, like a stone had been dropped into a still pond. He took a deep breath, forcing his emotions down. I won't make things difficult for you, Han Jian said. Hand over the person who killed Feng'er, and this ends now. And if I refuse? I countered with a cold smile. Then I'll have to do it myself. Han Jian shifted his gaze to Dianwei. The two men locked eyes, and their auras exploded simultaneously, clashing in the air with a literal boom. So strong, I thought, stepping back to give them space. I crossed my arms, watching the show. Neither of them moved at first. They were looking for openings. Even though Dianwei was at the 9th level, one level higher than Han Jian was a sword cultivator. In this world, sword users were famous for their terrifying combat power. Suddenly, they both moved at once. Han Jian's sword cleared its scabbard with a hiss, striking like a flash of lightning. Dianwei didn't panic. He raised his twin halberds to block, and the two of them collided in a blur of motion. The sound of clashing metal rang out like rapid-fire bells as they traded blows, each move more lethal than the last. One small mistake could have cost a life. I watched the fight with growing interest. This was easily the highest-level battle I had witnessed since arriving on the Tianwu continent. Even though they moved with blinding speed, my own cultivation as a grandmaster allowed me to track every strike. Dianwei saw his opening. He swung his twin halberds down toward Han Jian's head with crushing force. Han Jian had no choice but to raise his sword to block. But Dianwei's strength wasn't something that could be easily stopped. The sword blade hummed and vibrated under the pressure. The steel bent. Han Jian was forced down, one knee hitting the ground with a heavy thud. Dianwei didn't let up. He circulated his qi, adding even more weight to the halberds, pressing down like a falling mountain. Han Jian's other leg began to buckle. His sword trembled violently, as if it were about to snap. Finally, the pressure became too much. Han Jian was forced onto both knees. Dianwei didn't hesitate. He delivered a brutal kick to Han Jian's chest, sending the man flying 5 meters back. Han Jian crashed into the dirt. Before he could even breathe, Dianwei leapt into the air, soaring toward him. He raised his halberds, ready to split Han Jian's skull open. Stop! A voice cut through the air, halting Dianwei in his tracks. My mother, Bai Feng, appeared at the manor gates. She was accompanied by Xia Qingwu and my maid, Chen'er. They looked frantic. Mother? Why are you out here? I asked, confused. Chen'er, please, don't take his life, she pleaded. I looked at her, searching her face for a reason. She looked pained. I'll explain everything to you later, she promised. I thought about it for a second and then nodded. Dianwei, let him go. Yes, young master, Dianwei replied. He clearly wanted to finish the job, but my word was law. He stepped back immediately. Mother walked toward the fallen Han Jian. Her eyes were filled with pity. Han Jian, it's been many years. I never thought we would meet again like this. The way she said his name confirmed my suspicions. They knew each other. You came to seek justice for your disciple, Mother continued softly. But do you know that Li Feng provoked this house first? He destroyed our family plaque. My son only killed him to defend the honor of the Marquis estate. Han Jian stared at her, stunned. Blood leaked from the corner of his mouth. He looked devastated. Seeing the woman he once loved after 10 years, while he was broken and defeated in the dirt, it was a blow worse than any Dianwei had dealt. He struggled to his feet, his gaze lingering on her for a long time. I lost, he said hoarsely. He turned around and began to walk away. His footsteps were heavy, his back looking incredibly lonely as he disappeared down the street. A crowd had gathered outside the manor, drawn by the commotion. They whispered and pointed at the wounded swordsman. He's lucky to be alive, trying to cause trouble at the champion Marquis's house, one man sneered. Quiet, his friend hissed. Do you know who that is? That's Li Feng's master, a powerhouse from the Tianxin sword sect. The critic turned pale and quickly retreated into the crowd, terrified that Han Jian might turn back and kill him. We watched until Han Jian's figure vanished from sight. "Mother, let's go inside," I said, noticing the prying eyes of the neighbors. I didn't want her to be the subject of their gossip. Meanwhile, in a private room across town, a servant ran in panting to find Prince Jing Tianhong. "Your Highness, your martial uncle. He lost." "What? Lost?" Jing Tianhong stood up, his face full of disbelief. "Yes, after dozens of rounds with the Marquis' guard, he was badly injured." Jing Tianhong sat back down, stunned into silence. Beside him, his strategist, Du Ziting, looked just as shaken. "Your Highness, your uncle is an 8th-level Grandmaster," Du Ziting whispered. "If Jianwei beat him that easily, he must be at the 9th level or even higher. It's a good thing we didn't make a move ourselves, or else." Jing Tianhong felt a chill run down his spine. He never expected the house of the champion Marquis to be hiding a 9th-level Grandmaster. At the same time, inside the royal palace, Emperor Jing was reading a book when Lianing appeared in the shadows. "Your Majesty, Han Jian has been defeated. He is heavily wounded." The emperor set his book down, his eyes sharp. "So, this Jianwei is at least a 9th-level Grandmaster?" "Yes, Majesty," Lianing replied, bowing low under the emperor's heavy gaze. The emperor frowned. "My father, Lin Zhantian, was only a 9th-level Grandmaster himself. How could he have trained someone of that caliber in secret? And where did this man come from?" The fact that his intelligence network couldn't find a single scrap of information on Jianwei was infuriating him. "Lianing, have you found his origin yet?" "Not yet, Majesty," the eunuch whispered. "I will give you 3 more days," the emperor said, his voice cold and dangerous. "If you still have nothing, don't bother showing your face to me again." Back at the manor, Xia Qingwu sensed that Mother needed a private word with me, so she took the others back to my courtyard. "Chinner," Mother started. "Mother, if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to," I told her. She gave me a weak, appreciative smile. "It's okay. There's nothing to hide anymore." She looked off into the distance, lost in memory. "Before I married your father, he and Han Jian were actually friends. They were quite close. But then they both met me, and they both fell in love. Your father was bold and heroic back then. I was drawn to him. We fell in love naturally, and eventually, Han Jian left the capital. I haven't seen him until today. It was a classic story. I wasn't surprised. I had guessed as much when she stepped in to save him." "Wow, Mother," I teased with a light laugh. "I didn't realize you were such a heartbreaker. Were there any other handsome young heroes who fell for you back then?" "Stop that nonsense," she blushed, her face turning a rare shade of crimson. "I wasn't some fairy. There weren't that many people. I might not have seen you in your youth," I said sincerely, "but I'm certain you were more beautiful than any fairy." I wasn't just trying to flatter her. Even though she wasn't young anymore, time had been kind to her. She still carried an elegance that most women half her age would envy. Even now, Mother was the kind of woman who could make anyone stop and stare. She had a timeless beauty that didn't need youth to shine. "You're just talking nonsense now," she said. She tried to sound stern, but a happy smile played on her lips. No woman, no matter her age or status, dislikes being told she's beautiful. Mother was no exception. "Mother," I said, my voice turning serious. "What if Han Jian comes back to provoke us again?" I needed to know where she stood. This time, I had let him walk away for her sake. But there wouldn't be a next time. If he crossed the line again, I would end him, regardless of who pleaded for his life. Mother let out a long, heavy sigh. "If there is a next time, do what you must. My stepping in today was only to settle the debt of our old friendship. That debt is paid now." I nodded, relieved. "Don't worry too much. Han Jian lost today. Unless he's a complete fool, he won't be coming back." "I hope so," she murmured. I left her room and strolled back toward my own courtyard. As soon as I arrived, Menger hopped up from the stone table and ran over to me, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Brother-in-law, what did Annie tell you?" she asked. I reached out and gave her a playful flick on the forehead. "This is grown-up business. Kids shouldn't ask so many questions." "Ow, that hurt," Menger pouted, rubbing her forehead and glaring at me. Across the yard, Xia Qingwu set down her teacup. She didn't say a word, but she shot me a look so cold it felt like a physical chill. I froze. The playful mood vanished instantly under that icy stare. Ahem. I didn't even hit her that hard, I muttered, rubbing my nose sheepishly. Humph. Manga huffed, stomping back to the table. Being under Xia Qingwu's constant, silent scrutiny was starting to make me feel restless. I had to fix this. All right, Manga, I'm sorry, I said, walking over. Weren't you dying to know what my mother said? Tell you what, if you stop being mad at me, I'll tell you. Deal. I don't even want to hear it anymore. Manga turned her back on me, acting stubborn. I felt a bit speechless. It was just a little tap on the head. Did she really need to be this upset? Still, I was the one who poked the bear, so I had to be the one to soothe it. I reached into my mental bag of tricks and pulled out the ultimate weapon. Manga, do you still want to eat spicy strips? The effect was instant. The anger on her face flickered, replaced by a look of deep internal struggle. Spicy strips were her weakness. Are there really more? She asked after a long 10 seconds. Of course, I laughed. When have I ever lied to you? Fine. If you make me spicy strips, I'll forgive you for hitting my head. She actually started salivating just thinking about the taste. I breathed a sigh of relief. Dealing with the quirky, energetic Manga was one thing, but Xia Qingwu was a different story. She was cold and distant, which usually made her easier to be around because she didn't demand much. But I knew if I ever tried to flick her forehead, I wouldn't get a pout. I'd get a face full of cold steel. Brother-in-law, can I have the spicy strips for dinner tonight? Manga asked expectantly. You bet. I don't break promises to kids. I'm not a kid, she protested, puffing out her cheeks. I chuckled and sat down at the stone table directly across from Xia Qingwu. She glanced at me out of the corner of her eye. She looked calm, but I could tell something was bothering her. There was a strange tension in the air. I poured myself a cup of tea and took a slow sip, letting the silence stretch out. Manga was still brooding over being called a kid, and Xia Qingwu wasn't one for small talk. My mind drifted back to the Tianxian sword sect. Han Jian had lost to Dianwei. To save face, the sect would almost certainly send someone stronger to the Marquis Manor. Based on today's fight, every major power in the capital now had a rough idea of Dianwei's strength. If the Tianxian sword sect sent an expert beyond the Grandmaster level, how would I handle it? The thought gave me a headache. I had been developing my power in the shadows, but I was still a long way from matching the ancient, established sects. I lacked top-tier combatants. If I had someone above the Grandmaster level in my pocket, I could walk through this world without a single care. But you can't rush these things. Don't worry, Xia Qingwu said suddenly, her cold voice breaking the silence. The seniors of the Tianxian sword sect who are above the Grandmaster level won't be coming to the manor anytime soon. I looked up at her beautiful, sharp face. How can you be so sure? She shifted her gaze away, refusing to meet my eyes. Those who reach the void refinement stage are the pillars of their sections. They don't leave their mountains easily. They only strike if the sect's very existence is threatened. I nodded, processing her words. She was right. I was probably being too paranoid. In a place like the Great Jing Dynasty, how many people could there actually be who had surpassed the Grandmaster level? With that weight off my mind, I felt a bit more daring. I leaned in, staring at her. So, how many void refinement experts does your ethereal immortal sect have? Xia Qingwu's skin prickled under my gaze. She looked uncomfortable. Sect secrets. I cannot say. She stood up abruptly and walked back to her room, leaving me with those 4 cold words. So stingy, I muttered. What's the harm in telling me? Since I couldn't get anything out of the big sister, I turned my attention to the little one. Manga was much easier to trick. She didn't even realize the big bad wolf was looking right at her. Manga, I said, putting on my most charming, sunniest smile. Am I good to you? I guess so, she said cautiously. Then can you satisfy your brother-in-law's curiosity? About what? I leaned closer. How many void refinement seniors are there in the ethereal immortal sect? Manga's face lit up with pride. Hee. Just don't be scared when I tell you. I won't. Tell me everything. Listen close. In our sect, we have Manga. The door to the room slammed open. Xia Qingwu stood there, her face covered in frost as she cut her sister off. Sister. I didn't say it yet. Menger squeaked, looking terrified. Menger stuck out her tongue playfully, her secret staying safe for now. Our conversation was cut short, and I could only manage a helpless smile. I was so close. She was just about to spill the details, but then Xia Qingwu had to ruin it. I caught a glimpse of Xia Qingwu's cold, unapproachable face. For a split second, I actually had the urge to give her a good smack, and the thought was becoming surprisingly tempting. "Go back to your room," Xia Qingwu said, her voice like ice. Menger didn't dare to disobey her senior sister. She gave me a quick, mischievous wink and then vanished into the room like a puff of smoke. "The more you know right now, the worse it is for you," Xia Qingwu added, offering a rare explanation. In her eyes, I was still just an ordinary man with no martial cultivation. She thought she was protecting me from dangerous knowledge. She had no idea that the Lin Yuan she once knew, the useless playboy, was long gone. I turned around and looked at her calmly. I gave a slight nod. I wasn't planning on telling her I was already a Grandmaster-level expert. The timing wasn't right. The fewer people who knew my true strength, the better. Seeing me nod, Xia Qingwu stopped talking and retreated into her room. I stayed in the courtyard, sipping my tea and staring at the leaves on the trees, lost in thought. "Young Marquis, Madam is calling you for dinner." I don't know how much time had passed, but my maid's soft voice snapped me out of my trance. "All right, I'm coming," I said. I stood up and stretched my stiff limbs. Just then, the bedroom door opened, and Xia Qingwu and Menger walked out together. "Brother-in-law, I want to eat spicy strips," Menger chirped. I know. You two head to the dining hall. I'll go to the kitchen and make them for you." I headed off toward the kitchen before they could say another word. When the kitchen staff saw me arrive, they immediately dropped what they were doing and bowed low. "Young Marquis." "Everyone out," I said with a wave of my hand. "Yes, sir." Once the room was empty, I grabbed a plate and emptied several packs of spicy strips onto it. Then, I tossed the modern plastic packaging into the stove, watching the fire consume the evidence. I lingered in the kitchen for a while to make it look like I was actually cooking before heading to the dining hall. The servants outside the kitchen looked confused as I walked past with a plate of snacks they'd never seen before, but they didn't dare to ask questions. And I certainly wasn't going to explain. "Wow, brother-in-law, you're so fast." Menger's eyes lit up as she jumped to her feet. "Little girl, watch your phrasing," I joked. My mother, by phone, was a woman of experience and immediately caught the double meaning in my words. She gave me a sharp eye roll. "You're a married man now. Try to act like it." I gave a sheepish laugh. I'd forgotten my mother was sitting right there. The plate of spicy strips was devoured by the three women in record time. Menger took a sip of tea and sighed with satisfaction. "That was so good." "You honor, when did you learn to make these?" my mother asked curiously. Even Xia Qingwu pricked up her ears, waiting for the answer. I just tinkered around with it when I was bored," I said, giving a vague answer. It clearly didn't satisfy them, but my mother didn't push further. I breathed a sigh of relief. If they kept digging, I really didn't have a better excuse. We eventually headed back to our respective courtyards. I waited for Menger to go inside first before I retreated to the side room. The night passed without a word. The next morning, I opened my eyes and stretched my arms, feeling refreshed. The first thing I did every morning was check in with the system. This was my lifeline for conquering this world. "System, sign in." Ding. "Sign in successful. Congratulations, host. You have received one small spirit pill." Not bad. At least the system wasn't giving me weird junk today. A small spirit pill was exactly what I needed. I pulled the pill from the system space and swallowed it. It melted instantly, and a massive wave of medicinal power surged through me. My god-grade cultivation technique, the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan script, immediately began refining it into spiritual energy. By the time the power settled in my dantian, my cultivation had jumped to the 3rd level of the Grandmaster realm. I exhaled a cloud of turbid air, feeling energized. The morning grogginess was completely gone. After getting dressed, I called for my maid. She helped me wash up and then cleared the room. After breakfast, I sat in the courtyard, bored, watching the two women practice their swordsmanship. One was tall and elegant, the other small and nimble. They moved with grace, their blades piercing and slashing through the air. It was a beautiful sight, honestly. They practiced for a long time until beads of sweat appeared on their foreheads. You must be tired. Come have some tea, I called out, pouring 2 cups. Thanks, brother-in-law. Manga ran over and downed her tea in one gulp. Xiaoqing Wu didn't say anything, but she took a small, polite sip. Brother Yuan. Brother Yuan. I looked toward the courtyard gate and saw a familiar, chubby figure waddling toward us. It was Chen Wei. What's up, fatty? I asked as he approached. Nothing much. I'm just bored. I wanted to see if you wanted to go out for a stroll, Chen Wei said. He then turned to Xiaoqing Wu and gave a respectful nod. Hello, sister-in-law. She gave him a slight nod in return. Ever since I got married, Chen Wei hadn't come around much. He might look a bit dim, but he had enough emotional intelligence to know he shouldn't disturb a newlywed couple. Sure, why not? I agreed immediately. I was starting to get a bit of cabin fever staying in the Marquise estate anyway. Having a companion to walk around town sounded great. Brother-in-law, I want to go too. Ming'er chirped, unable to sit still. You're not going, Xiaoqing Wu cut in. You have sword practice this afternoon. Ming'er pouted, her lower lips sticking out in protest, but Xiaoqing Wu ignored her and took another sip of tea. It's okay, I said, patting Ming'er's head. Practice hard, and I'll bring you back something delicious. The mention of food worked like a charm. Ming'er's pout vanished, her lips curling back into a happy smile. She shot a triumphant look at Xiaoqing Wu, as if to say her brother-in-law was much better than her sister. Xiaoqing Wu simply ignored her, continuing to sip her tea with an air of cold indifference. I stepped out of the estate with Chen Wei, and the sounds of the city immediately washed over us. Vendors were everywhere, shouting at the top of their lungs. Beef pies. Get your hot beef pies here. Steaming meat buns. Fresh out of the steamer. Look here. A mysterious cultivation technique for only 10 taels of silver. Chen Wei and I walked side by side through the crowded streets. The atmosphere was lively, filled with the simple, raw energy of everyday life. It felt good to be out. Brother Yuan, let's go check out that mysterious technique the boss was talking about, Chen Wei said, his eyes lighting up with excitement. I looked at him like he was an idiot. Fatty, you're a grown man. Can you stop being so gullible? Chen Wei gave me a wounded, resentful look as I kept walking, but he quickly scurried to catch up. I knew what he was thinking. Ever since my brush with death, he felt I had changed. The old Lin Yuan was always the first person to jump into a crowd to see a spectacle. Now, I was steadier, calmer. We continued down the busy road, occasionally tossing a few coins to the beggars lining the street. I had just tucked my coin purse away when I noticed a large crowd gathered ahead. People were pointing and whispering, clearly watching some drama unfold. Little lady, your filial piety has moved me. I've decided to give you the money to give your father a proper burial. The voice was oily and repulsive. I looked through the gap in the crowd and saw Yuan Jian. He had a lecherous grin plastered across his face as he stared down at a girl kneeling on the ground. She looked terrified, trembling as she stared at the silver in his hand, unsure if she should take it. Is this girl stupid? Meeting young Master Yuan is a blessing from her past life, someone in the crowd shouted. Exactly. For him to take an interest in you. Your ancestral graves must be smoking with good luck. The onlookers were shamelessly sucking up to Yuan Jian. Hearing the compliments, his head tilted back with arrogance, his mouth twisting into a crooked, self-satisfied smirk. The girl was young, maybe 16. In front of her lay a tattered sheet of paper that read, "Selling myself to bury my father. 50 taels." Yuan Jian stood with his back to us, looming over her. I didn't say a word. I just stood there and watched. Well, little lady, I'll give you 100 taels, Yuan Jian said, his voice growing impatient. Follow me, and you'll be mine from now on. The girl looked torn. With 100 taels, she could bury her father with dignity. But she knew Yuan Jian's reputation. Selling herself to him was a death sentence. She had hoped a kind soul would buy her, but reality was proving to be cruel. She kept her head down, frozen by indecision. I could see the desperation in her eyes. I glanced at Chen Wei and gave him a sharp nod. He knew exactly what to do. Move. Get out of the way. Chen Wei bellowed, using his massive frame to shove through the crowd. He was like a human battering ram, clearing a path in seconds. Chen Wei. Yuan Jian spun around, looking surprised. Yuan Jian. Is Fatty a name you're allowed to call me? Chun Wei shook his meaty fist in the air. Call me that again and see if I don't set your face on fire with my iron punch. You? Yuan Jian sneered, his eyes dripping with disdain. Chun Wei started rolling up his sleeves. Oh, I've got a real temper today. He didn't have any cultivation, but he knew I was standing right behind him. He wasn't scared at all. Before things could turn into a fist fight, I stepped forward. Yo, if it isn't little Gigi? Yuan Jian's face turned several shades of green and purple, like a performer in a face-changing opera. Ever since I had taught him a lesson last time, he had been dreaming of revenge. He just hadn't found the right moment yet. Humph, he snorted, clearly hating the nickname. I haven't seen you in a few days, and here you are again, harassing a girl in broad daylight, I said with a cold laugh. Harassing? I'm moved by her filial piety. Yuan Jian shouted righteously. I've decided to help her. I almost laughed at the sheer gall of the guy. Every noble in the capital knew exactly what kind of person he was. Is that so? Then I must have misunderstood you, little Gigi, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Since you're so eager to help, give her the money. Let her bury her father in peace. Yuan Jian froze. It wasn't that he couldn't afford 50 taels. It was that he wanted the girl. If he gave her the money freely after acting so noble, he couldn't exactly drag her away by force without making himself look like a liar in front of everyone. He looked at the girl, then back at me. He didn't want to let his prize slip away. Brother Gigi, you're the son of the Prime Minister, I prodded, mocking him. Don't tell me you can't even produce a measly 50 taels. Who says I can't? Yuan Jian snapped. I was just wondering where she would go. A pretty girl like her wandering the streets alone is very dangerous. Don't worry about that. I countered immediately. The Marquis's estate is short on staff. I'll take her back and settle her there. Yuan Jian stammered. I had blocked every exit. He stared at my smiling face, and I could tell he wanted nothing more than to punch me. After a few tense seconds, he gritted his teeth and pulled 50 taels from his purse, throwing them onto the ground in front of the girl. Brother Gigi is so generous, I said. He let out an angry huff, pushed through the crowd, and disappeared down the street as fast as he could. Thank you, young masters, for saving me, the girl whispered, her voice soft and trembling. Don't mention it, I replied. Take this money and go bury your father, I said, handing the girl the 50 taels I'd forced out of Yuan Jian. If you have nowhere else to go afterward, come to the house of the champion Marquis. The girl's eyes welled up with tears. She bowed deeply, her voice trembling with gratitude. Thank you, young Marquis. Once I have laid my father to rest, I will serve you for the rest of my life. Go on then, I added, pulling another 50 taels from my own purse and pressing them into her hand. Take this too. You'll need it for expenses. She was overwhelmed, sobbing as she thanked me over and over. After that little interlude, Chun Wei and I continued our stroll through the streets of the capital. The sun was beginning to set, and the dinner rush was starting. I decided we should eat out. We walked into a high-end restaurant, and the waiter recognized us immediately. Given our reputation as the city's top 2 playboys, it wasn't surprising. Young Marquis, young Master Chun, please, follow me to a private room upstairs, the waiter said, bowing low. He led us to a luxurious suite on the 2nd floor. I sat down and waved a hand dismissively. Bring out your best signature dishes and a jar of your finest wine. Right away, sirs. He bowed himself out of the room. A short while later, the table was covered in steaming plates and 2 jars of strong liquor. I tried a bit of everything. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad either. Chun Wei, ever the attentive sidekick, poured the drinks. We clinked our cups and downed them in one go. So, Brother Lin, Chun Wei asked, leaning in with a curious grin. How's married life treating you? It's fine, I said vaguely. Not much different from before, honestly. Technically, I wasn't lying. Even though Xia Qingwu and I were married, we slept in separate rooms and barely spoke. It was a marriage in name only. Chun Wei rolled his eyes at me. Don't be like that. Do you know how many noble sons in this city would kill to marry your wife? She's a legendary beauty and a cultivation genius. You should be counting your lucky stars every night. I just ignored him. Sure, Xia Qingwu was beautiful and talented, but I wasn't exactly a slouch anymore. In terms of raw cultivation, I had already surpassed her. If anything, she was the lucky one to be married to me. Drink up, I said, raising my glass again. Tell me, fatty, do you want to keep drifting through life? Or do you want to actually accomplish something? Do you want to walk the path of a martial artist or join the imperial court? I couldn't let him waste his life forever. If he wanted to cultivate, I'd find a way to help him. If he wanted to be an official, that was even easier to arrange. Chun Wei's expression slumped. A look of genuine sadness washed over his face. Brother Lin, I've always wanted to be a martial artist. But my talent? Well, you know how it is. We're in the same boat. In the Tianmu continent, strength was everything. Every man dreamed of carrying a sword and wandering the world as a powerful master. Even a lazy guy like Chun Wei had a spark of ambition buried deep down. If you want it, I'll make it happen, I said, my voice serious. You have to step onto the path of cultivation. Really? He looked at me, his eyes wide with a mix of hope and disbelief. Then his shoulders sagged again. But Brother Lin. No buts, I interrupted. Just trust me. He was my only real friend in this world. There was no way I was going to leave him behind. Seeing how determined I was, he nodded, his face brightening. All right, Brother Lin. I trust you. Let's drink to that. We polished off the wine quickly. Chun Wei's face was beet red, and he was starting to stutter. I felt a bit tipsy myself. I left a few silver ingots on the table, slung his arm over my shoulder, and helped him out of the restaurant. The capital at night was even more crowded than during the day. Lanterns lit up the streets, and the sounds of vendors and street performers filled the air. Young masters, come play with us, a voice called out from above. I looked up as we passed a brothel. Several women were leaning over the second-floor balcony, wearing sheer, revealing silk that left very little to the imagination. Now wait for me. I'm coming up, Chun Wei muttered, waving drunkenly at them. He tried to stumble toward the entrance. I caught him by the collar. You're a noble son of the capital. Have some dignity. How thirsty are you? Come on, Brother Lin, he whined. You finally got out of the house. Let's have some real fun. No way, I said, putting on a serious face. I'm a married man now. Going to a place like that wouldn't be proper. It wasn't that I was afraid of my wife. I just had zero interest in these women. After seeing the likes of Xia Qingwu, these common performers didn't even register. Chun Wei didn't push it. I dropped him off at his family estate and made my way back to the house of the champion marquis alone. As soon as I stepped through the gates, a shadow flickered in the darkness. Master, you've returned, Black Wuchang said, appearing silently by my side. Give me an update on the soul-breaking hall, I whispered, leading him to a secluded corner of the courtyard. We have over 1,000 members now, he reported. 500 remain here in the Great Jing Dynasty. The rest have been taken by Shun Lian to the Great Wei Empire to investigate the truth behind your father's death. I nodded. Good. Keep expanding. I want our organization to be everywhere. I want eyes and ears in every corner of the continent. Understood, Master. I will give it my all. He bowed low. Any movement from the Marquis of Jinshi? I asked. It had been a while since I killed Li Dan and Li Feng. He had to have noticed they were missing by now. Nothing yet, but he'll likely act soon, Black Wuchang replied. Keep a close eye on him. I want to know his every move the moment he makes it. With a wave of my hand, Black Wuchang vanished back into the shadows as if he had never been there. I walked back to my own courtyard. The lights in Xia Qingwu's room were already out. I slipped into my own room and let the slight buzz of the alcohol carry me into a deep sleep. The next morning, the sun was warm and a gentle breeze blew through the trees. I sat up and performed my daily ritual. System, sign in. Ding. Sign in successful. Congratulations, host. You have received a realm-breaking pill. I looked at the pill in my hand, my interest piqued. I studied the description of the realm-breaking pill provided by the system. The effect was straightforward but incredible. As the name suggested, it allowed the user to break through their current bottleneck regardless of their cultivation level. I was thrilled. My mind immediately went to my 3 subordinates who were at the 9th level of the Grandmaster realm. Using it on one of them would maximize the pill's value. But choosing who to give it to was a struggle. They were all fiercely loyal, and I only had 1 pill. After weighing my options, I decided Chun Wei was the best choice. First, he was already operating in the public eye. Second, he was my personal bodyguard. The stronger he was, the safer I would be. As for Black Wuchang and Shun Lian, they hadn't been exposed yet. Their current strength was more than enough to lead the soul-breaking haul for now. Once I made my decision, I dressed quickly and headed to Chunwei's quarters. "Young master," Chunwei said, bowing with a look of surprise at my early visit. "Come inside," I replied, leading the way into his room. Once the door was shut, I pulled out the pill. "This is a realm-breaking pill. After you take it, you'll be able to step into the void-refining realm." Chunwei stared at the pill, his eyes glowing with excitement. But then he hesitated. "Young master, this medicine is too precious. You should keep it for yourself." I smiled. "It's fine. You're my guard. If your strength increases, I'll be safer, won't I?" Chunwei thought for a moment and nodded solemnly, reaching out to take the pill. "Take it now. I'll stand guard for you." He didn't hesitate any longer. He swallowed the pill and sat cross-legged on the floor, circulating his energy to refine the medicinal power. I stepped outside and closed the door softly. This was a critical moment for him, and I couldn't allow any distractions. The jump from Grandmaster to the void-refining realm was a massive hurdle. Many martial artists spent their entire lives trying to cross it and failed. But once you succeeded, your strength changed fundamentally, and your lifespan increased significantly. A practitioner at the Xiantian realm lived for about 100 years. A Grandmaster lived for 200. But a void-refining expert could live for 300 years. I stood outside the door, feeling anxious. If Chunwei could successfully break through, I would finally have a high-level powerhouse by my side. It would give me the confidence I needed to face the Xiantian sword sect. Time ticked by. I could feel Chunwei's aura inside the room slowly growing stronger. If I hadn't been able to sense his progress, I would have burst inside to check on him. Even though it hadn't actually been that long, my nerves made every second feel like an hour. Finally, his aura reached a breaking point. It felt like a dam about to burst. Inside, Chunwei's eyes were tightly shut as he slammed his internal energy against the barrier in his dantian. A sound like shattering glass echoed from within his body. His chi surged through his limbs with newfound joy before settling back into his dantian. He realized his energy capacity had more than doubled. He calmed his excitement, stood up, and opened the door. "Thank you, young master," he said, bowing deeply. I let out a long breath, the weight finally lifting from my chest. "Don't mention it. Go and get familiar with your new power." "Yes, sir." I waved him off and headed toward the dining hall. I hadn't eaten yet, and the tension had left me starving. "Brother-in-law, where were you so early?" Meng'er asked curiously as I walked in. "Just taking a walk," I replied vaguely. "Fine, don't tell me then," she muttered, turning back to her breakfast. Xia Qingwu was there too, eating small, graceful bites. My mother, by phone, smiled when she saw me. "Lin Yuan, you must be hungry. Come and eat." I sat down, enjoying a rare moment of peace with the three of them. "Eat more, son," my mother said, a meaningful smile playing on her lips. I felt a chill. Whenever she looked at me like that, trouble followed. She piled food onto my plate before turning to Xia Qingwu. "Qingwu, you and Lin Yuan have been married for a while now. Have you been craving anything lately? Anything sour or spicy?" "No," Xia Qingwu replied, looking confused. My mother's face fell instantly. "No? Oh well, you're both still young. There's no rush." I kept my head down, my mouth twitching. Xia Qingwu might not have understood the subtext, but I did. My mother was checking for pregnancy symptoms. From the look on her face, she probably thought I was the problem. I couldn't exactly tell her that we'd been sleeping in separate rooms since the wedding. If I did, the shock might actually kill her. She was desperate for a grandson, and here we were, barely speaking. I shoveled food into my mouth, pretending I didn't understand a word she was saying. Sigh. My mother watched me bolt my food down and sighed. I could practically see her wondering if she needed to call a doctor to check my vitality. As soon as I finished, I practically ran out of the room. I decided to head to the Marquis Estates library to finish the reading I had started the other day. Meanwhile, back in our courtyard, Xia Qingwu and Meng Er were practicing their sword forms. In the middle of their session, a snow-white messenger pigeon landed on the stone table. Xia Qingwu stopped, retrieved the note, and released the bird. "Sister, who is it from?" Meng Er asked. "It's from Master." "What does it say?" Meng Er looked worried. thinking they were being summoned back to the sect. Master says an ancient ruin has appeared on the border between the Great Jing and Great Wei empires. We're being sent to explore it. Meng let out a sigh of relief, her eyes instantly lighting up with excitement. When do we leave? Now, Xia Qingwu decided. The other sects are probably already on their way. Meng pumped her small fist in excitement, but then she paused, thinking of me. But brother-in-law isn't here. Shouldn't we say goodbye before we go? Xia Qingwu hesitated for a moment, her eyes reflecting the urgency of the mission. There's no time to wait for him. Just tell the servants. He'll find out when he gets back. Meng felt like they should stay, but she couldn't win an argument against her senior sister. They quickly packed a few changes of clothes and rushed out the door. From the capital to the border, it was a 5-day journey by horse if they pushed hard. They didn't waste a second. Back at the library, I finally closed my book and rubbed my aching eyes. The sun was high in the sky, and I figured it was almost noon. I whistled a light tune as I walked back to my courtyard, expecting to see the girls practicing their forms. Instead, the courtyard was eerily silent. Meng, I called out. No one answered. I thought they might be napping until a young maid scurried over, looking nervous. Young Marquis, the Madam and Miss Meng have left. I frowned, my confusion growing. Left? Where did they go? I assumed they had just gone back to visit the minister's estate. They received a message from their sect, Master. They said an ancient ruin appeared on the border between Great Jing and Great Wei. They left in a great hurry. The maid lowered her head, clearly terrified that I was about to lose my temper. Ruins, I muttered to myself. I dismissed the maid with a wave of my hand and paced the floor, thinking. I signaled toward the shadows. Fetch Black Wuchang. Before the words even left my mouth, Black Wuchang's figure flickered into existence beside me. You're just in time, I said before he could bow. Do you know about the ruins on the border? I was just coming to report that, Master, he replied. I received the news moments ago. My men spotted the Madam and Miss Meng leaving the city, so I hurried here immediately. I asked him for specifics, but he didn't have much. He lowered his head, waiting for a lecture that never came. I took a deep breath. I'm going to take Shun Lian and head there myself. You stay here and guard the estate. If I hadn't married Xia Qingwu, I wouldn't have cared, but she was my wife now. I couldn't just let her walk into a trap. Black Wuchang nodded firmly, promising to keep the Marquis estate secure. By noon, the dining table was overflowing with food. My mother, by phone, sat alone, waiting for us. Go hurry Lin Yuan and the girls, she told the maid. The food is getting cold. I'm here, Mom, I said, stepping into the room. She looked behind me, searching. Where are Qingwu and Meng? I didn't want her to worry or start imagining the worst, so I lied. They're busy. They went to visit a close friend and won't be back for a while. Let's just eat. She seemed to accept that, and we sat down together. During the meal, I kept my voice casual. Mom, I'm going on a long trip after lunch. She paused, her chopsticks midair. Where are you going? I told her I had business at the border. She didn't press me for details or try to stop me. She just looked at me with a soft, maternal concern. Take Shinlian with you. Just be safe. She knew I was a man now, and that I had my own path to walk. I finished my lunch, feeling the weight of her silent prayers, and prepared to head out. Shinlian and I mounted our horses at the gate. We didn't bring any extra servants or baggage. Mom, I'm off, I shouted, waving one last time. We spurred the horses, and they shot forward like arrows released from a bow. On the surface, it looked like I was only traveling with one guard. In reality, over 100 members of the soul-breaking hall were trailing us from the shadows. Deep inside the imperial palace, the atmosphere was much colder. Lian Ying, the old eunuch, entered the emperor's study and bowed low. Your Majesty, the young marquis has left the city with Shun Lian. The emperor didn't look up from his scrolls. Do you know where they are headed? Lian Ying reported that based on their route, they were likely going to the ruins that everyone was talking about. The emperor narrowed his eyes, a cruel light flickering in them. A waste who can't even cultivate. What business does he have at a ruin? Lianing suggested I was likely going to protect my wife. The emperor let out a cold snort. Follow them. When you get the chance, make sure they stay at the border forever. Meanwhile, at the Jinnan Marquis estate, Du Changchun and his son Du Ziding were having a similar conversation. His other son, Du Zixian, had already left for the ruins on orders from his sect. Father, Lin Yuan finally left the city. Du Ziding was practically vibrating with excitement. Du Changchun gave a predatory smile. The fool. If he stayed in the capital, people might hesitate to strike. But he's running straight to his death. Du Ziding wanted to move immediately, but his father held him back. Wait. Others are more desperate than us. Take our experts and follow them at a distance. Once you see that Lin Yuan and Shun Lian are dead, send word back immediately. Shun Lian and I pushed our horses through the dust and wind for hours. As dusk began to settle over the land, I decided we should stop at Yang City for the night. We were still a distance away, separated from the city by a dense, tangled shrub forest. I pulled back on the reins, bringing my horse to a halt at the edge of the woods. I looked at the dark thicket and felt a sudden chill. Something was wrong. I couldn't see anything, and I couldn't hear anything, but the silence was far too heavy. I didn't let the eerie silence stop me. I had Shun Lian by my side, a powerhouse who could handle almost anything. I pressed my knees into my horse's flanks, and the animal snorted before stepping into the thicket. Shun Lian followed closely. The deeper we went, the stranger it felt. A forest this size should have been filled with the sound of birds, but it was deathly quiet. We rode a bit further until the bushes suddenly exploded with movement. Dozens of men rushed out from every direction, surrounding us in a tight circle. I did a quick count. There were about 50 of them, all clutching swords and sabers. Who are you? I asked, my voice steady. Why are you blocking my path? A man with a plain, rough face stepped forward, laughing. He had a massive blade resting on his shoulder and a cocky smirk. You've got guts entering the Mad Demon Woods without knowing the name of the Mad Demon Stronghold, he shouted. I looked at him, confused. The Mad Demon Stronghold? What do you want? Hand over everything you have, he barked, eyeing my expensive clothes. Do that, and I might consider letting you live. I realized then that these weren't agents sent by my enemies. They were just common bandits. I actually found it a bit funny. I had only ever seen stuff like this on TV, and now I was living it. Do you even know who I am? I asked with a light chuckle. You really want to rob me? The leader's face darkened. I don't care who you are. If you don't want to die, give me the money. I pulled out my coin purse and tossed it up and down in my hand. I have plenty of money. The question is, are you strong enough to take it? You're asking for death, the leader roared. Brothers, kill them. The mob charged at us with a deafening shout. I didn't even reach for a weapon. I didn't need to. Shun Lian was already moving. The first bandit to reach us didn't even see the punch coming. Shun Lian's fist slammed into the man's chest, caving it in instantly. The bandit flew backward, hitting the ground in a heap, dead before he landed. The rest of the gang froze. The sheer violence of the move paralyzed them. By the time they regained their senses, several more of their friends were flying through the air, their bodies broken. Shun Lian was like a wolf in a sheepfold. He didn't just fight, he harvested lives. I watched without a hint of mercy. These men had spent their lives robbing and murdering the weak. Their hands were stained with the blood of the innocent. Today, their luck had simply run out. As night fell, the forest reeked of blood. Dead bodies littered the ground. The bandit leader stood alone, his jaw hanging open. He was a grandmaster, but he couldn't even track Shun Lian's movements. He had assumed Shun Lian was just a servant with no cultivation. He was wrong, dead wrong. Your turn, I said, smiling at the leader. The man's knees buckled. He started stuttering, his bravado completely gone. I didn't know. Please, my lords, have mercy. I was blind to your greatness. I let out a cold laugh. Mercy? Who gave mercy to the people you robbed and killed? To survive in this world, you need strength, little man. You don't have it. I gave Shun Lian a slight nod. Before the bandit leader could utter another word, Shun Lian ended him. It was quick, clean, and final. We left the bodies for the crows and continued toward Yang City. 15 minutes later, we passed through the city gates. Yang City was a major hub, nearly as bustling and prosperous as the capital itself. We led our horses through the crowded streets until we found a place called the Yueli Inn. Welcome, travelers. Staying the night? The waiter asked, rushing out to meet us. 2 of your best rooms, I said. And bring your signature dishes to my room. Make sure the horses are well fed too. The waiter beamed and let us inside. After a solid meal and a hot bath, I climbed into bed and closed my eyes. But I wasn't going to sleep just yet. Shortly after I retired for the night, the eunuch Lian Ying slipped into the inn with 5 men. They gathered in a room down the hall to finalize their plan. Should we move now, Excellency? One of the men whispered. Lian Ying wore a cruel smile. Lin Yuan is asleep. Now is the perfect time. I'll go and pin down Shen Lian. You 5 handle the waist. Killing a man with no cultivation should be easy for you. We won't fail you, the men replied, bowing low. They drew their weapons and crept toward my room, their footsteps silent on the floorboards. Lianing positioned himself outside Shen Lian's door, ready to intercept him. The 5 assassins reached my door and pushed it open with a faint creak. Bathed in the pale moonlight, they saw a figure huddled under the blankets on the bed. They shared a predatory grin. 2 stayed at the door to guard the exit while the other 3 crept toward the bedside, blades raised. They wanted to end me before Shen Lian even knew they were there. But when they were only a few feet away, the entire room suddenly flooded with light. The candles had been lit in an instant. Coming to see me this late? I asked, sitting up and leaning against the headboard. I hope you have a good reason. The assassins froze, their eyes wide with shock. They didn't understand. They were supposed to be the hunters. I looked at them, my expression calm and almost innocent. Shen Lian was standing right there in the corner of the room. He had warned me the moment these rats entered the building, and he had been waiting in the shadows the whole time. So what if you found us? One of the men spat, finally regaining his composure. You're still going to die? I chuckled, the sound echoing in the quiet room. Is that so? Why don't you try it and see who dies first? Kill him. All together. The leader barked. He lunged at me first, his blade slicing through the air toward my head. I didn't move an inch. I just sat there, watching the steel get closer. The assassin's face twisted into a joyful grin, thinking he had already won. He was wrong. Just as the blade was about to split my skull, a massive figure exploded from behind the bed like a tower of iron. It was Shen Lian. He reached out and caught the naked blade with his bare hand. The assassin's smile froze. He pulled and twisted with all his might, but the sword didn't budge. It was like it was bolted to a mountain. Keep one alive, I said calmly. Yes, young master, Shen Lian replied. Then the slaughter began. It was fast and brutal. Shen Lian moved like a storm, starting with the leader. I heard a sickening crack as he snapped the man's wrist like a dry twig. The assassin screamed, a high-pitched sound that tore through the quiet night. Shen Lian didn't stop there. He systematically broke every one of the man's limbs until he collapsed into a heap, passing out from the sheer agony. Outside, the faint sounds of the struggle reached Lian Ying. I knew he was listening. He must have realized his plan had failed and that Shen Lian had been in my room the entire time. He was a coward at heart. Instead of coming to save his men, he vanished into the night. He knew he couldn't win this time, but I knew he'd be back. Inside the room, 5 bodies hit the floor. 4 of them were dead, and not neatly, either. Against a grandmaster like Shen Lian, these 5 Xiantian-level assassins never stood a chance. Lian Ying, how many times do I have to tell you? I sighed, looking at the mess. Killing is fine, but do you have to be so messy? I'll try to do better next time, Shen Lian said, scratching his head with a sheepish grin. I looked at the 4 corpses with crushed skulls and shook my head. Wake the living one up. I threw back the blankets and put on my shoes. Shen Lian grabbed a basin of cold, foot-washing water and splashed it right into the leader's face. The man gasped awake, his body convulsing as the pain of his broken limbs flooded back. Kill me, he pleaded, his voice trembling. I sat down in a chair Shen Lian brought over for me. Don't worry. If you answer my questions honestly, I'll give you a quick end. I don't know anything. Just kill me. I see. You won't talk until you see the Yellow River, is that it? I nodded to Shen Lian. Help him remember. Shen Lian stepped forward and ground his boot into one of the man's shattered bones. The assassin drenched his clothes in sweat from the pain, but his teeth remained clenched. He was stubborn. I decided it was time to turn up the heat. I admire your courage, I said, standing up. I pulled out a small, sharp knife and began flipping it between my fingers. I hope you can keep it up. Have you ever heard of Lingqi? It's also called the death of 1,000 cuts. I leaned in close, my voice soft and conversational. It means I slice the meat off your body, one piece at a time, until there's nothing left but bone. But don't worry. I'm very good. I won't let you die until the very last piece is gone. Even Shun Lian looked a bit uncomfortable hearing me describe it so casually. I gave the man 1 minute to think about it. He didn't even last 30 seconds. The fear in his eyes replaced the pain. I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. Smart man, I smiled. Who sent you? Lianing. Eunuch Lian, he stammered. I wasn't surprised. Lianing meant the Imperial Palace. And who does he take orders from? I don't know that. He's our direct superior. What organization do you belong to? We don't have a name. I'm from the Assassination Hall. There's also an Intelligence Hall and a Wealth Hall. Where is your base? The end of Hingyang Road in the capital, he gasped. That's the Assassination Hall headquarters. I don't know where the others are. Good enough. I nodded to Shun Lian, who ended the man's misery. My room was a bloodbath, so we moved to Shun Lian's quarters. I spent the rest of the night writing a letter and sending a soul-breaking hall messenger to the capital. As I lay in bed, I wondered, was it the emperor who wanted me dead, or the crown prince, Jing Tianhong? It didn't matter. The royal family had drawn first blood. If they didn't want to sit on that throne anymore, I'd find someone else to take it. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed. After a quick wash and a solid breakfast, Shun Lian and I hit the road again. The next 2 days were surprisingly quiet. No bandits, no assassins. We were 2 days from the border, but we still hadn't caught up to Xia Qingwu and her maid. As the sun began to set, we reached Fengye City. It was a mid-sized place famous for its maple forests. We checked into a high-end inn, and after dinner, I decided I needed some fresh air. I changed into some loose, comfortable clothes and headed out with Shun Lian to see what the city had to offer. The city earned its name from the vibrant maple forests surrounding it. Even though Fengye City wasn't large, the streets were alive at night. Pedestrians wandered past, some lingering at stalls while others hurried toward their destinations. I took it all in, drifting from one vendor to another. Whenever I saw a snack that looked appetizing, I bought a portion to try. Excuse me, brother, is that snack any good? A soft, melodic voice drifted into my ear just as I took a bite. I turned around. Standing there was a young noble dressed in white silk robes. He had a companion with him, a clean-cut youth dressed like a servant. One look was all it took. My eyes were sharp enough to see right through them. The delicate voice and the slight curves beneath their robes gave them away instantly. They were girls playing dress-up. I didn't call them out. Instead, I gave a friendly smile. It's actually very good. Do you want to try some? The handsome young gentleman looked at the food with pure anticipation. Thank you, brother, but a gentleman doesn't take what another loves. I'll just buy my own to taste. He cupped his hands in a polite greeting. He looked incredibly cute trying to act tough. This girl was actually Lu Hongxiu, the daughter of the city lord, Lu Sheng. Her parents were out of the house tonight, so she had seized the chance to sneak out with her personal maid. Usually, she had to act like a refined lady of a great house. She never got the chance to eat street food. Now that she was in disguise, she intended to eat until she couldn't move. She watched me eat with such gusto that she couldn't help but ask. Once I confirmed it was delicious, she hurriedly ordered her maid to buy a portion. This is amazing, she whispered, a look of pure bliss crossing her face. I felt like teasing her. My dear friend, why do you look like a delicate little woman when you eat? Her eyes went wide. She immediately dropped the act, her face turning bright red. She stood there frozen, clutching her snack, unsure if she should take another bite or hide it away. We've been talking for a while, I said with a light laugh. May I ask your name? I'm Lu Hong. She cut herself off, her hand snapping over her mouth. Her eyes were huge. She had almost blurted out her full name and ruined the disguise. Lu Hong. I repeated. Yes, Hong as in Hong the red-tailed bird. She scrambled for an explanation, her mind racing. I see. It's a pleasure, brother Lu Hong. I cupped my hands back at her. And you? She asked, letting out a quiet sigh of relief. She looked quite proud of her quick thinking. What's your name? Lin Yuan. Brother Lin, hello. She mimicked my gesture, looking very solemn. The night grew darker as a cool autumn breeze swept through the main street of Funya City. We stood there by the roadside, finishing our snacks and chatting like old friends catching up. Is Brother Lu a local? I asked. I am. Are you not, Brother Lin? I'm from the capital, I replied. The capital? Her eyes lit up with longing. Is King's City very prosperous? Is it beautiful? It's all right, I said casually. If you ever visit the capital, come find me at the Lin Estate on Zhengyang Street. I'll show you around myself. Really? It's a deal, Brother Lin. She reached out her pinky finger, wanting to pinky swear. I smiled and hooked my finger with hers. We talked until our snacks were gone. Eventually, she looked at the sky with a hint of regret. Brother Lin, it's getting late. I have to head home. Perhaps we'll meet again if fate allows. She knew her parents would be back soon and her night of freedom had to end. Sure. Until next time. She waved at me and disappeared into the crowd with her maid. I watched them go, then caught the eye of a man standing in the shadows nearby. I gave a subtle nod. The man, a member of my soul-breaking hall, immediately moved to follow them. What an interesting girl, I muttered, shaking my head with a smile. It was time for me to get some rest too. Back at the inn, I had just finished washing up and was about to head to bed when there was a knock at the door. It was the scout I had sent. Master, I watched them enter the city lord's manor. The city lord's manor? Yes, I asked around on my way back. The city lord, Lu Sheng, has only one daughter named Lu Hongxiu. Those two gentlemen were definitely not his sons. I understand. You can go. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing my chin. Lu Hongxiu. It was a pretty name. I wondered if our paths would cross again before I left this city.